Justin FREAKIN, the formidable voice of the culture.
Hey Justin, are you trolling?
This is the Troll Patrol, live with Justin FREAKIN.
Welcome to the Troll Patrol Live. It's a freaking Wednesday morning. This dude looks like a younger version of Rupert Murdoch. What is going on with that? George Freakin. Bader, good thing you didn't like your movie, or good thing I came on since you didn't like your movie. You got some entertainment now. We're going to be doing Prime Minister's questions. You can see Rishi Sunak just sat down at his position.
£280 million total payment, the highest ever that has been ordered in a...
Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
Order.
I cannot commit to doing this every week because, like, I was asleep and I didn't want to get up.
Parliament next Wednesday. Between 3:15 and 3:45, the sitting of both houses will be temporarily suspended. His Majesty will be unveiling a plaque in Westminster Hall and then unveiling and switching on the Platinum Jubilee gift from
Switching on?
both houses in New Polishard. Members wishing to attend
switching
that
on.
occasion should email Blackrod's office by 4 p.m. tomorrow. Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, I would like to point out that the British Sign Language interpretation proceedings...
C-SPAN should be really fun this morning.
Live TV. We start with questions...
Following the election last night in Georgia.
Question number
Here we go.
Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Dr. Philippa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the United Kingdom in its current form turned 100 years old. But neither the Prime Minister
Well, happy
nor
birthday.
the Labour Party seem to recognise the challenge of the Supreme Court ruling as to the very nature of the Union. He didn't answer me 2 weeks ago, so can the Prime Minister clarify if he still believes the UK is a voluntary union? And if so, can he explain the
So
democratic...
the Scottish delegation has been... What is she... Oh, she was yawning.
whether to stay in it or not?
The Scottish delegation has been on his ass.
Mr. Speaker, we fully respect the decision of the Supreme Court and believe strongly in the United Kingdom. And as I said to the Honourable Lady last time, we will work constructively with the Scottish Government to deliver for the people of Scotland.
The Scottish government keeps telling you they don't want to be a part of the UK.
Mr. Speaker, financial scams are the most common form of crime, causing immense emotional and financial distress to millions of people. And government efforts in this matter have tended to focus on making sure that scammers can't launder their proceeds of crime and that victims get compensation. Both of those are really important, but they're acting after the scams happened. Does my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, agree with me that government departments,
Right honourable.
regulators and industry, perhaps guided by an anti-scams task force, could do far more?
Yes, this is live. Good morning, Core, Sky Comet, Mater, Warlord.
About this.
Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is right to highlight the hurt that scammers and fraudsters can cause. We are working closely with industry to block more fraudulent calls from reaching the public, and importantly, our new online...
Ooh, I like that, Mater.
will place duties on the largest internet companies.
I'll work on that.
Scam ads. I would be happy to meet with my honourable friend to discuss.
We did this a couple of weeks ago, Core, and it went really well. This is the Labour Party leader.
Mr. Speaker, can I start by welcoming the new Member of Parliament for the City of Chester to her place in this House.
Well, welcome the Right Honourable Prime Minister, or Prime Minister.
For years we've been fighting that seat, and I look forward to working with her to build a better future for the people of Chester.
Chester.
Mr.
Sassy,
Speaker,
good morning.
The Conservative Party promised the country it would build 300,000 houses a year. This week,
Silly pants
without
stormer.
asking a single voter, the Prime Minister broke that promise by scrapping mandatory targets. What changed?
Mr. Speaker, let me start by also welcoming the Honourable Lady to her place. Now, the Honourable Gentleman comes
Everybody talking in a British accent now.
on the process and the politics.
Totally right. I can't do it.
Taken the time
Warlord's like shaking his head right now.
what we are doing to improve our planning system. So let me just explain what we are doing.
Just remember, you can never be racist against the British.
We are investing millions to develop brownfield sites. And we're providing support and protection for local neighbourhood plans. Just this morning, the Shadow Housing Secretary said, communities should have control over where homes are built and what sort of homes are built. That's my position, that's her position. What's his position?
Yeah, Prime Minister's questions is always rowdy, and then we're going to take C-SPAN call-ins, and they should be fun right after this election last
Does
night.
he really expect us to believe that the member for Chipping Barton and the member for the Isle of Wight are cheering him on because he's going to build more homes? Pull the other one. I'll tell him what changed. His backbenchers threatened him. And as always, the blancmange Prime Minister wobbled.
He wobbled.
Grubby deal with a handful of his MPs and sold out the aspirations of those who want to own their own home. Was it worth it?
Mr. Speaker, as ever, engaging in the petty personality politics, not focused on the substance. Again, let me explain what we're doing. We're delivering what I said we would do. We're protecting the character of local communities. We're cracking down on land banking and irresponsible developers. And we're giving people a greater say in their decisions. Just this week, Mr.
Giving people a greater say in their decisions. I think the Scottish people would disagree with you about that.
Should be giving people more power and control. Now he seems to be opposing that policy. It's only Wednesday. I know he flip-flops, but even for him, it's pretty quick.
Mr. Speaker, he's forgotten. Last week I offered
I love this.
votes to pass these housing targets because this is bigger than politics. The former housing secretary on their side said scrapping mandatory targets would, this is his words from their side of the House, be a colossal failure of political leadership. No wonder he doesn't want to fight the next election, Mr. Speaker. The author of the manifesto that they all stood on said it would cut building by 40%, perhaps even more. Why would he rather cripple house building than work with us to get those targets through?
Mr. Speaker, we're not going to work with the Labour Party on housing. You know why? We'll have a look at their record on housing. In London, the
He's slick.
Conservative mayor in 5 years built 60,000 affordable homes. The current Labour mayor, half of that amount. In Wales, we want to build 12,000 homes. What are Labour delivering? Half of that, Mr. Speaker. The Labour Party talks, the Conservatives deliver.
Mr. Speaker, as ever, too weak to stand up to his own side on behalf of the country. Mr. Speaker, I noticed there was another U-turn last night, this time on wind farms. Actually, I agree with that one, but is there no issue on which he won't give in to his backbenchers? Now, Mr. Speaker, how did his
Nader,
Baroness Moe...
This is Sir Keir Starmer. This is the Labour Party leader, so I would assume that most closely aligned with us leftists. This is Rishi Sunak. You would call him a shit lib. He's their version of the Republicans, but probably closer in political ideology to a Biden, a conservative Democrat.
It's absolutely right that she is no longer attending the House of Lords and therefore no longer has the Conservative whip. The one thing we know about the honourable gentleman, he is a lawyer. He should know there's a process in place.
Well, at least the British chuds are good looking.
I hope that it's resolved promptly. But I'll say one thing, Mr. Speaker, because I tell him what is weak. I tell him what is weak is not being able to. I'll tell him. And that's not being able to stand up to people. I know he's taken some advice from Gordon Brown lately. Why doesn't he listen to a former minister in Gordon Brown's government?
I mean, Core, I was trying to be very oversimplified about it.
Businesses like pubs and restaurants who will lose business as a result of the train strikes. Labour should stand up for working people. If he's strong, that's what he should do.
Mr. Speaker, it may not...
I do think there's some reptilians in this chamber right now.
This morning, his Transport Secretary said that his flagship legislation on strikes, this is what he said this morning, his Transport Secretary, might want to listen to
Good morning, RB.
Is clearly not going to help with the industrial action we're facing. He should stop...
It's amazing how the story of...
and everyone can see what's happening here.
The last Labour Party leader,
got their hands on...
Whose name is escaping me right now.
And then provided Duff PPE.
Yeah, they have been striking for a while now, a few weeks.
He signed the checks. How much is he going to get back?
Mr. Speaker.
But the last Labour Party leader and Bernie Sanders faced a lot of the same bullshit.
Legislation with regard to strikes, and I'm very happy to address it, actually. So hard-working families right now in this country are facing challenges. The government has been reasonable. It's accepted the recommendations of an independent pay body, giving pay rises in many cases higher than the private sector. But if the union leaders to continue to be unreasonable, then it is my duty to take action to protect the lives.
Can you imagine a conservative in the U.S. saying the government's giving pay rises faster than the private sector?
Working for new, tough laws to protect people from this disruption. That's the legislation he's asking about. Will he now confirm that he'll stand up for working people and that he and his party will back that legislation?
Mr. Speaker,
Jeremy Corbyn, that was his name. I've been sitting here trying to think of the name the entire time.
said about that legislation this
Yes, they smeared him with accusations of anti-Semitism.
opposed to Labour's plan.
The story of what happened to Jeremy Corbyn is a lot like what happened to Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary.
While one of their unelected
It's just a hell of a lot harder to smear Bernie as an anti-Semite when he's Jewish, but they tried their damnedest.
Mr. Speaker, I want to raise something that is worrying parents across the country.
Tony Blair is old school. That was back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Families of the children who've
He was butt buddies with Bush.
from the outbreak of Strep A in recent weeks. I'm very happy to work with the government on this. So can he take the opportunity to update the country on the measures the country is taking to keep children safe this winter?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my thoughts are, of course, with the families of the children who have sadly lost their lives. We are seeing a higher number of cases from Strep A this year.
Oh, yeah, the Strep A thing. I was going to cover that tonight.
The NHS, who I have sat down to talk about this, are working very hard to make sure parents are aware of the symptoms that they should be looking out to, because
Bill Braverman there, the finance minister, looking very pissed for some reason.
Shortages of drugs available to treat this, and there are well-established procedures in place to ensure that that remains the case. And the UK SHA are monitoring the situation at pace, and what they have confirmed is that there
Pretty much, Sky Comet.
a new strain of Strep A, so people should be reassured about that. There is no reason to believe that it's become more lethal or more resistant to antibiotics. So the most important thing for parents to do is look
Now,
at...
there is a white supremacist strain in Britain, very anti-immigrant. That has been an issue.
Provide a positive experience for many holidaymakers, but too many cause real issues for local communities. In Westminster, we have 30...
James O'Brien speaks a lot about the anti-immigrant sentiment.
That it is now time to consider a registration...
Overton window over there is measured in metric.
authorities, so councils can properly manage this growing sector.
My right honourable friend, the Levelling Up Secretary, has indeed said that we will deliver a new tourist accommodation registration scheme, something I know my honourable friend has asked for. It will increase appropriate regulation of the sector, better understand and monitor the impact on local communities, and we will...
Where have we gone as a world where people are asking to be like Britain?
Especially in tourist hotspots.
Can I welcome the new leader of the SNP?
100 years ago, saying that in many countries on this planet would get you killed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to begin by paying tribute to my friend,
See, there's you, skinhead.
Honourable Member for Ross Skye and Loch Aber, who has served us with diligence and duty for the last 5 years. Mr. Speaker, he is a giant of the Scottish independence movement. Mr. Speaker, he's seen off not one, not two, but 3 consecutive Tory Prime Ministers. Indeed, he was on to his 4th.
Where are you supposed to toss tea, Mater?
Prime Minister, I have a very simple...
How are you going to steep you some tea if you don't put it in water?
...consider to be the greatest achievement of the Conservative Party in government since 2019. Leaving the single market and customs union, ending freedom of movement, denying Scotland her democracy, or getting the Labour Party to agree with all of the above.
Mr. Speaker, can I start by offering my genuine and warm, heartfelt best wishes to the Right Honourable Member for Ross Skye and Loch Aber. I know the whole House will miss his weekly contributions.
We'll miss you, big guy.
May I also also congratulate or join the First Minister in congratulating the honourable gentleman on his appointment as a Westminster leader of the SNP. I look forward to a constructive debate with him across the dispatch box. Mr. Speaker, the answer to his question is actually very simple. The things that we are most proud of in the last couple of years is making sure that we protected this country through the pandemic with furlough and with the fastest vaccine rollout.
You're acting like the pandemic is finished. We're getting ready to hit another wave. Lenny.
He's going to have to up his game.
Good morning.
Why? Because in the last 15 minutes, a poll has landed which shows the support.
Oh shit, unelectable airwaves. Welcome in, guys.
And support for the Scottish National Party sits north of 50%.
We are watching Prime Minister's questions. After this wraps up here in a few minutes, we're going to be watching C-SPAN call-ins, which should be wild here the day after an election.
£500 will cause those poll numbers to rise or to fall.
So come on in, pull up a seat.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what we're delivering for households across
We're having a jolly good time right now.
Scotland is £55 billion of support with energy.
Hey, somebody please shout out unelectable for me.
Homeowner about £900 under their bills.
Thank you guys for being freaking followers.
For the most vulnerable, and that is, Mr. Speaker.
Love the Dorner remote. I need to put my Dorner remote back up. Dalvin, enjoy her.
For people in Scotland.
David Boris!
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
Did somebody just yell for Boris? What?
getting right to the end of the process. It's gone through right to the levelling up stage 2.
Killeen.
It has
Good morning, and thank you for being a freaking follower.
Everything that's going to offer.
I think I said your name correctly.
When are we going to be getting?
If I say anybody's name wrong, please give me a phonetical spelling. I want to get it right. Morgan is fine.
Friend.
I hope you are more than fine. I hope you are fantastic. Good morning, Morgan.
For Eden North for some time. I was pleased to work with him in my previous role. He knows I can't comment on any specific bid, but I know that the Secretary of State will be making these decisions by the end of the year, and I wish him and everyone involved in the project every success.
Stuck in. Good morning.
People and businesses in Northern Ireland accept the need for the protocol and want to see negotiated, pragmatic solutions to the various challenges.
We got about 15 more minutes of this, and then we'll be heading over to C-SPAN for live call-ins, and that should be a blast.
Frustration and concern at the slow rate of actual progress in those talks. So what steps?
What do you think this is, a flop house?
Some momentum into those.
Now I'll cut unelectable some slack because Twitch won't automatically bring you into the room you raid now.
As soon as possible, preferably.
But sometimes I'm a few minutes behind coming in myself when I raid people.
And also to hear views on how the Assembly can be restored via reform.
I like that rule, unelectable.
The honourable gentleman for his question.
I now say your name as Badass.
Recently to discuss these
How
issues.
you like that?
Let me give him and the people of Northern Ireland my assurance that I want to see the issue of the protocol resolved as quickly as possible.
Rielan?
I do believe
Good morning.
that if we enter into these talks in the spirit of goodwill and pragmatism, that we can indeed find a way through. My right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary,
Hasn't been too fun this morning. They're talking about goodwill and pragmatism. We didn't come for this
and I will
shit.
take on board his suggestion to come visit Northern Ireland to discuss these things in person.
Durham Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, Henry.
Small Business Saturday, where we mark the important impact small
Hell yeah,
businesses
triple
have on
MVP.
communities. I, like many of my colleagues, have spoken to these businesses and heard just how great their concerns are for their future. When the Prime Minister was Chancellor earlier this year, he went with me to Fred Hallam in Beeston, a business established in 1908. SMEs.
Usually I try to give you guys some political insight. I got no clue what's going on here. We're just making fun of people with British accents
lay
or
out
something.
how he will ensure businesses such as Fred.
I think Rishi Sunak is kind of hot. I'd invite him to the orgy.
Vital goods and services to my constituents in Broxton.
Thank you. Well, I know my honourable friend is a fantastic champion of his.
I'd probably trade him for. I'd probably trade Joe Biden for him.
Visit Beeston and Hallam's earlier this year with him, and I remember we discussed then some of the things we were planning to do, which are now going to make a big difference, saving businesses hundreds or thousands of pounds with their energy bills through our relief scheme this winter, our business rates tax cuts package worth over $13 billion.
Yeah, my main mod is British, so please
and with
make fun of the British.
Annual investment allowance and help to grow.
Professor Q, good morning. We're doing Prime Minister's questions, and then we're going to move over to C-SPAN here in about 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mater's like, I'm not British.
Committees, both the author of the government's own National Food Strategy and the United Nations Special Rapporteur.
Bit of a looker, isn't it?
Call for universal free school meals to address the issue of the 4 million children hungry in the UK. Will the Prime
This
Minister...
motherfucker's talking about children starving, and I'm cracking jokey jokes over here.
And their families in Liverpool, West Derby, and the country, and at no extra cost to the taxpayer.
I think he said stabby.
Mr. Speaker, I know this is an issue on which the Honourable Gentleman has campaigned for some time, and he's right to highlight the importance.
I mean, that's a British tradition, isn't it, Mater? Starving children.
I'm proud that we introduced not just an expansion of
just to eat beans and toast.
holiday activity and food programme. I'm
Gwen, thank you for the sub.
Further, I look forward to hearing from him.
Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whether on defence with AUKUS...
Rielan, giving out the gift subs. Fuck yeah, I love you.
I know this government recognises the importance of the Indo-Pacific to the UK's security and prosperity, but...
Second phoned. Good morning.
Ballistic missile tests or the Belt and Road are deeply interconnected. So can the Prime Minister confirm that the Indo-Pacific remains a UK priority?
I'm sorry, Skycom, I don't even know what I said that was terrible.
Within government to meet the challenges and capture the opportunities that exist in the region.
No three-headed mode. I'm sorry, Dolphin.
Review set out.
I do take requests. I'll make up some remotes for you.
Foreign policy. I reaffirmed this government's commitment to that tilt in a speech at the Lord Mayor's dinner just the other week, and he's right to highlight both the economic and security importance of the region. He should be reassured that we're pursuing not just free trade agreements bilaterally, but also CPTPP, the AUKUS partnership, and indeed, hopefully, a
PTPPPT
to our future combat air system, all evidence that we are delivering on the tilt.
Siobhan McDonough.
Mr. Speaker, members across this House know the devastating impact of bank...
Oh, yes, I can't do accents. I don't do impressions, I don't do accents.
Banks flee the high streets, our free cash machines...
Okay, I can do an alright Alex Jones.
Most vulnerable
President Xi.
Sure,
please liberate these British
right that a quarter of ATMs charge people to access their own money. So will the Prime Minister join dozens of his own...
Ma'am, you should hear what's going on in Lebanon right now.
cross-party amendment and ensure that everyone has free access to their hard-earned money.
Seriously, ma'am, check out Lebanon. They're having to, go in and hold the place up with Molotovs.
To safeguard access to cash, and that's what the financial services and markets...
Oh, the Troll Patrol will be here Sunday through Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, in its normal slot.
I'm also pleased that we
put an extra stream.
The industry to subsidise free-to-use ATMs in deprived...
Molotov, that's a great name for it, Mater.
Are benefiting from our new shared cash facilities because access to cash is important, and that's what our new bill will deliver.
Manchester.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I very much welcome the government's commitment to its hospital buildings programme. Can the Prime Minister clarify what criteria will be applied for the allocation of those new hospitals? And will it be done in line with the Prime Minister's personal commitment on a merits-based system of government? Because my hospital in Medway serves 500,000...
Apparently, several people in my chat want to cancel Justin. There's a whole thread inside of our Discord. It's just clips of me that's going to get me canceled.
Of resources in Medway. Will the Prime Minister visit Medway with me and fellow local MPs to look at our urgent needs?
Morgan, good morning.
Well, my honourable friend is a fantastic...
If I didn't tell you already.
...for his local area, but especially for his local hospital. He'll know that I can't comment on any specific scheme, but I can tell him that...
Yes, I'm Justin FREAKIN.
...being reviewed in the department and an announcement...
Pleasure to meet you.
...shortly.
If you want to know where I stand politically, I can sum it up pretty easily. I would give anything in the world to piss in Dan Crenshaw's open eye hole.
Small Business of the Year.
Give me that eye pussy, sir. That is my political beliefs. 9 Tanky, good morning.
Small businesses.
So glad to see you.
Is the beating heart of the local community and the cornerstone.
So yes, Matt Walsh did once call me a formidable voice in the culture.
By the government as they're clobbered by outdated business rates year after year.
That legitimately happened. I'm still a little tripped out by that.
Continue with to back the online giants, or will they join the Labour Party and back small business and scrap and replace the outdated business rates?
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, can I congratulate Daisy Rose for winning their award and being the beating heart of their high street. I very much hope that they will benefit, and I'm almost certain they will, from discounts on business.
Again, we'll be moving over to C-SPAN here in just a few minutes.
Relief gives a 75% discount on business rates in the next financial year.
America deserves a swift kick in the balls.
We'll be providing Daisy Rose and others with their energy bills,
He's kicking authority in the balls.
of what they would have otherwise been without our support.
Connor Barnes.
Malama, good morning. I didn't. Okay, so we played the clip from the Gavin McInnes
and colleagues across the House
last night on the actual Troll Patrol.
And encouragement in recent weeks.
I didn't know. So Hassan got taken down for playing like the whole thing in full, and it was literally like Gavin's little organization that took him down.
He leads to our ambition.
Yeah, he'll be back up like tomorrow. He got a 48-hour ban because of playing that. Like, I just played a little clip of it, and we made some jokey jokes about Kanye, and then we played Hitler Kanye.
And see the
Hassan was watching the entire thing.
£1 million rebuild of the Oak Academy.
He's got a laser under the eye patch, but hasn't replaced the battery.
Opportunity to the people I have the privilege.
That's even better, because then maybe I can short circuit him when I piss in his open eye hole.
I say that it's very nice to hear from my right honourable friend today, and he's absolutely right. There is no better way to spread opportunity around the country than by investing in our children's future. I'm absolutely delighted that Oak Academy...
Yeah, censored TV went for him. I think everybody sees the irony.
And I will certainly ask my office to keep...
Except right-wingers who have zero self-awareness and can't feel embarrassment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've raised this matter before, but despite meeting with a previous Prime Minister in 2020, this matter has not progressed.
To watch it and to stop and make a lot of comments and talk over it, that's probably the best. Like, I didn't even know there was an issue, but I only played like 2 minutes of it. So
political demonstration outside the Libyan embassy. No one has
we got him canceled. Free speech. Well, that's like I've got a troll that comes into our chat.
A senior high court,
and he's called in Discord in before, but he has totally filed takedown notices on shit that he came on and talked to me about, and then admitted that he has filed takedown notices on other people, but says he's for free speech.
Will the Prime Minister meet with me to see how this case may be taken forward and finally bring those responsible for the murder of Yvonne to justice in a criminal court?
Oh, can I thank...
As if you can get justice in a court.
...work on this case, as he said, it's something that he has raised before. He'll appreciate that while I can't speak in detail on any particular case, there are differences in the standard of proof required for civil and criminal proceedings. You know, that said, the CPS will consider any new information...
Any speech is jolly rotten good.
...in relation to this case, and of course, I'd be very happy to meet with him.
Jackie Doyle.
Yeah, let's talk about DM.
Returning to the theme of communities being able to decide where to build, in Thurrock we embrace our obligations to deliver...
Well, I thought we were going to get another Scottish person being like, why aren't we free, bitch?
...deliver 2,500 new homes ready to go. However, there is a standing objection to any development over 300 homes from national highways because of the impact on junction 30 of the M25.
Unfortunately, I'm afraid I might get to be the streamer that's known for taking the hit and getting called a pedophile and a groomer. If this last week is any indication, but I don't have kids. I'm never around kids. I've never been around kids. I hate kids. So I guess if somebody's going to take the accusations of being a pedophile and a groomer, is going to be me. So I can go in there and tell everybody how dumb they are.
With the details of the issue, so we can give her a full response, but praise her counsel to trying to make sure that we can build the homes where we need them.
Dame Diana Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why can't the government process asylum claims within 6 months, thereby saving £5.6 million
within 6 months?
Seekers accommodation.
It's a fucking decade-long process here in the U.S.
And stopping the abuse of the system, which currently has a backlog of 100.
Well, I mean, my hair gets really frizzy, so you got to groom your hair and shit.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what we are doing is significantly increasing the number of caseworkers. We are on course to double it by next spring, with several hundred already in place. And
I still think she looks awful confident for somebody who has been embroiled in scandal for the last couple months
in our system and make sequential claims. That is exactly the type of thing that the Home Secretary and I are working on fixing, and I look forward to having the party opposite support when we do.
I'll beat the grooming accusations the way I beat my dick.
There've been more reported deaths
That doesn't sound right at all.
following mRNA vaccination in 18 months than there has been to every conventional vaccine administered worldwide for the last 50 years. And given that mRNA vaccines are not recommended for pregnant women or those who are breastfeeding...
That's pretty much the way it is with the right-wingers. So you wash your ass, you're a groomer.
...funded MHRA's recent recommendation that these experimental vaccines are administered to children as young as 6 months of age.
Wait, what? We got an anti-vaxxer up in here.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me first say that I believe COVID vaccines are indeed safe and effective.
Yeah.
Vaccine, COVID or otherwise, will be approved unless it meets the UK regulator standards of safety, quality and effectiveness. We have an independent body. The JCVI determines which age...
I'm totally into sexual anarchy, but we've described on the show many times, sexual anarchy totally means consent.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During COVID, we all applauded our NHS nurses.
Have your safe words, do proper aftercare.
Constituents and our loved ones. But we now know that at the same time, Tory spivs...
This motherfucker looks like Sargon of Akkad.
...using their connections and COVID to help themselves to millions of pounds of public money. Why is the Prime Minister on the side of the...
You were waiting for a nut, Sky Comet? Some people call that edging. No, that is not Carl Benjamin. No way.
Time was working as hard and as quickly as they could to get the PPE.
He does look like him, though.
To get the PPE needed for our frontline workers, including...
No, he ran for a seat and didn't win, right?
Independent procurement process. Ministers were not...
Lucky you, Quinn. Lucky you.
It was right, Mr. Speaker, but that people gave their ideas...
Fully automated luxury gay space communism? That sounds amazing to me. I do believe that's a streamer, isn't it?
PPE from a law firm. She suggested we should get ventilators from a football agent. Everyone was trying as hard as they can. We should remember the context and stop playing politics.
A politician is going to stop playing politics.
2 weeks ago, more than 350 people attended a meeting in Skegness to discuss the use of 5 seafront hotels to house...
I think he's been banned in a lot of places.
In their view, that there was a long-term...
I go searching for chuds, so, you know.
They told me loud and clear that, like the Prime Minister, they think hotels are the wrong place for asylum seekers.
Hire some seat fillers for PM's questions.
Urgently to lay out a plan that moves beyond the use of hotels, puts asylum seekers in the right place for them.
Well, if you want to find you some IDW chuds, I've got a channel for you. It is a Wednesday. The intellectual Dollar Tree comes on tonight on Echoplex Media.
A day housing asylum seekers. Hotels are incredible.
The same scalp Elon had before the plugs. I will give Elon props. Like the hair plugs look good.
The best way to solve this problem sustainably is to reduce the number of illegal migrants coming to the United Kingdom, and that's what this government...
It does. His hair does.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Audit Wales has confirmed that the Welsh Labour government responded well and got on with the job of delivering...
Did somebody say PP?
...payers' money. Can the Prime Minister...
Did somebody say PP?
What first attracted...
I like the PP in Dan Crenshaw's open eye hole.
...COVID contracts to Tory donors and supporters, and what is he doing to claw taxpayers...
Yeah, Wednesday night is when you find the IDW chuds over on Echoplex Media.
Mr. Speaker, we delivered 32 billion pieces of PPE to the front line.
Oh, that PPE.
A global shortage. As I've already said, everyone tried to do their bit. We heard recommendations from the Shadow Chancellor, but it was wrong.
I've been banned so many goddamn times. I've got a temporary account right now, but I keep begging Elon to restore my account. Put one up permanent. What? What am I putting up? What?
Independent review of children's social care has been with the government since May, and I understand
you want me to just stick...
The response to it won't be published before Christmas, but can the Prime Minister ensure, given the very important recommendations about some of the most vulnerable children in our society and the families who...
Is that what you were wanting, Mater?
that there will be a strong and robust government response as early as possible in the new year.
Give me that eye pussy, sir.
My honourable friend obviously knows this subject area well. He's right to highlight the importance of making sure that we do provide good quality support to vulnerable children. The report has a lot of interesting suggestions in it, and he's right, and I can commit.
Not high enough for this shit.
Final question, Claire Hanna.
Thank you very much. Prime Minister, over 70% of Northern Ireland's international tourists arrive to Dublin and travel across the land border. The UK government's proposed electronic travel authorisation would likely mean the North being struck off the itinerary.
I have been inundated with, first of all,
And the last thing we need is a barrier.
as soon as Elon took over on Twitter, it had me follow Elon Musk, and I know for a fact I would never fucking follow Elon Musk.
Living in Ireland, members from across the
Kyle Rittenhouse,
isn't a normal.
Matt Taibbi,
Commit to scrapping this.
a lot of right-wing content creators are popping up in my Twitter.
So we remain very committed to the common travel area, and indeed do not want to see any checks on the island of Ireland, and that's why we're...
That fucker that has alpha male in his description, he keeps popping up on my timeline. Nick Adams.
Obviously.
Sitting cow.
Right, let us go on to the urgent question. Urgent question, Dame Margaret Hodge.
Urgent question. No? There you have it. That was Prime Minister's questions. Allow me to come over here. We're going to fire up the C-SPAN. Oh yeah, I have to watch it on this browser because I have to be logged into my C-SPAN account. That's the kind of person I am. I have a fucking C-SPAN account. What kind of sick fuck am I? I have a fucking C-SPAN. So now we're going to Washington Journal, C-SPAN call-ins, and my God, this is always fun. And the day after election, it should be wild, guys. Oh shit! I've still got the British up in the background here. Shut the British up. Can you imagine the people throughout history who have wanted to say that? Let's shut the British up.
That's what that is about. So they're trying to dismiss and say, oh, we're hunters of private citizen. And if we can waste millions of dollars...
Motherfucker, we pop over here and they're already talking about Hunter Biden.
Is a very annoying person. But we, Democrats, wasted millions of dollars.
There was a coup. They arrested 25 people in Germany. We're going to be covering that tonight on the Troll Patrol's normal
but Joe Biden has
stream.
Literally done everything we...
Also, here, like, I hate to cut the dude off with the Hunter Biden, because you know that's... And also, Hunter Biden has a gigantic schlong. There's also something I want to speak about, and I'll give the same little spill tonight on the show. Something happened at Ted Cruz's house last night, and every indication is that it's a very tragic thing involving one of his kids or possibly one of his kids' friends. I wish Ted Cruz the best. I know that's not usually something I would say. The issue is incredibly serious, and it's a epidemic among children, teens in this country that needs to be dealt with. So I do not wish any ill will on Ted or his family in this moment. They cops were on the scene last night and something happened. To continue to talk about it feels exploitative and dirty to me. So I need to mention it because I'm a news person. But I have nothing but sympathy for Ted and hope his daughter's friend, family is okay. Call from West Virginia.
And to tell me that Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and bought and sold, they sold us out. It's not good.
Atlanta, Georgia, next up, Tiffany. Good morning. Tiffany in Atlanta, go ahead.
Yes.
You're
yes,
on. Go
good
ahead.
morning.
Yes, good morning.
I just want to say that with this last election, we were utterly traumatized in the state of Georgia. It was ridiculous. I mean, we were utterly...
Did Herschel make you have an abortion?
The commercials. We had commercials on the TV. We had commercials on the radio. We had pamphlets being sent out every day. If you
Shocker.
were on the internet, you were seeing commercials on the internet if you were shopping for something.
Welcome to late stage capitalism.
Old-fashioned planes flying overhead with signs that said, go and vote for such and such and so. And it got so bad, they were calling us on the phone. This election actually...
She just described every election ever since the invention of television and radio.
It was the craziest election because when you look at both candidates, both of these men obviously got something going on. Like, it's something wrong here. I'm just like, when I look back, you know, what really confused me, what really got me confused, like,
what's wrong with Warnock?
People were calling me from all over the country, asking me, like, what's going on down there with y'all? Are y'all crazy? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, no.
Well, Warlord, judging from her accent, I would say she's black, too.
Tiffany, did you vote? Did you get out and vote, or you vote absentee?
I voted both in both elections.
Right. Good.
I voted from the beginning. But it's just the point of how traumatizing this was. You know, it's crazy. We've got to really get people. Because to be honest with you, I have historically voted Democrat. But I am not satisfied with either party right now.
How'd you vote this time? For Warner or for Warnock or Walker?
I'm not going to say how I voted.
That's fine.
But I'm going to say this.
Yes, I did say she sounds black. I'm sorry. I apologize. Canceled. That's why they canceled Justin.
The dirt that was pulled up on these guys. Like, I don't really, you know, to be honest with you, I wouldn't date either one of them. I'll tell you that right now. But, you know, it tripped me out. Like, you've got the Republicans putting anybody up
Emmerich, good morning.
so that they can get control of the Senate. And then, you know, you've got this guy, he's like, you know, I don't care about what happens to you, you know, what you're doing with your wife. That's none of my business. That's none of my business, seriously.
Well, Tiffany, it sounds like you're glad it is over. Thanks for sharing your thoughts to Los Angeles.
You wouldn't date neither of them.
Mohammed, Democrats line.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
What up, Mohammed? Good morning.
Yesterday's vote in Georgia, this midterms are finally done. But the fact that Donald Trump wanted to destroy our republic, it remains there. And so long as Donald Trump is...
I mean, I think Warnock's a snazzy-looking guy. I wouldn't kick him out of bed.
Leaders like McCarthy and McConnell and everybody else still supporting him, even though he wanted to overthrow the government.
Sir, Mitch McConnell does not support Donald Trump. They hate each other.
Said that the country went down the toilet, is going down the toilet. The country went down the toilet, to quote him, unquote, when Donald Trump took the office of the presidency. This whole talk about...
Fucking Smokey once in. Hold on.
Nonsense. Republicans and Democrats. Republicans had control of the House, Senate, and the White House for the first 2 years of Trump's presidency. They did nothing about the border. If they were to get all the illegal immigrants out of the United States, the economy of the U.S. would crash.
Yeah, Mater, now that seems racist.
And then, as far as the Ukraine war is concerned, this is all because of Donald Trump's fault. The day he called the president of Ukraine, and
okay. Like,
to them until they find
the dude's a little off base here. Like, Ukraine war is totally not all Trump's fault. There's a hell of a lot of history behind that.
Energized. There's nothing there. Hunter Biden never ran.
Perfect McGrady, good morning.
Trump was the most corrupt man to ever hold office. Now, he said earlier...
even that's debatable because we've had some corrupt presidents.
And 2 days later, he comes and he says, I didn't say that. He lies about lying. Aren't you enough?
That's true.
7 years of this crap been enough for you Americans?
All right, Mohammed in Los Angeles, the headline of what he was
Isn't 7 years of this crap enough for you Americans?
given hard time.
It is for some of us.
Becoming president, given Constitution comments. The majority leader making those remarks yesterday outside of the Senate chamber. He also talked about the progress on government funding for fiscal 2023. Here he is.
First, let me just say that anyone seeking the presidency who thinks that the Constitution could somehow be suspended or not followed, it seems to me would have a very hard time being sworn in as President of the United States. With regard to all the issues that are swirling around, let me just say that we're at a pretty significant impasse. I think job one is to try to get the NDAA approved without any extraneous matters included in it. We've done this for 60 straight years, and I don't think this ought to be the first year that we don't achieve passing an NDAA. With regard to government spending, time is ticking. We have not.
Oh God, I am so sorry you guys had to sit through Mitch McConnell.
And I think it's becoming increasingly likely that we may need to do a short-term CR into early next year. We're running out of time.
And this is sad that they're going to pass another CR because we're still basically operating on the budget they passed during the Trump administration.
Talking about what's called the omnibus, the current short-term measure ending or expiring on December 16th.
This is what they call the debt ceiling. This is the next fight we're going to have.
Roll call, new wrinkle in veterans dispute as negotiators seek omnibus deal.
Copious amounts of adrenochrome in here.
Want to reclassify some veterans.
Who gives a shit what Debbie Wasserman Schultz thinks?
During the current negotiations for fiscal 2023 omnibus, but Republicans object to the effort.
Continuing resolution, just to pass the same budget they've been operating on. We've been operating on the same budget since like 2019.
Florida, the chair of the House Military Construction Veterans Affairs Appropriations Subcommittee, said Tuesday that
no problem, server. That's what I'm here for.
As discretionary or mandatory is part of the omnibus negotiations. Quote, in negotiations generally.
For any of you that are new, I used to do news on the radio years and years ago in another life.
Of the talk, she said.
News for TV, newspaper.
For Raphael Warnock, 202.
Now I do the news and your mom.
One for Republicans. Democrats, 202-748-8000. It's 202-748-8002.
Adds a lot of class. Mater, somebody commented on one of my YouTube videos the other day and said, you have no class. I'm like, whoever said I had class?
It's a wonderful victory for the state of Georgia and the United States. The freedom it gives Democrats.
Unfortunately, I was wrong. I called Warnock by 5 points. Last night it was about 2 points.
Also hopefully demonstrates
it looked like what he was going to win by. I have not checked the tally today. There was still like 4% of the vote out.
Another silver bullet to keep the werewolves at bay.
A silver bullet.
One more silver bullet for democracy to defend itself.
Captain Caveman. What's Captain Caveman?
They made the right choice on war.
We're watching Washington Journal.
Must keep our states producing the best senators we can.
You can hop in the Discord and fucking share all kinds of shit with us, though. Please, please.
The media bias we have to tolerate, says Rush in Mission Valley.
Yeah, Rhea,
Warnock is a worthy citizen to hold the office of the
They do like 15-minute segments, right?
Georgia will be well served by
So they'll do like a little news, and they take like 15 minutes of calls.
Up next, it's Rudy, Democrats Line.
Yes, I'm so proud of the citizens. White, black, Hispanic, all races.
I watched Mr. Cartoon when I was a kid.
See through the smoke screens and vote for a man of integrity. The Republicans used to vote for.
I mean, Warnock is a shit lib for sure, but like that's the best senator you're gonna get from a Georgia. That's what I'm extremely happy with Mark Kelly because, like, my God, you couldn't ask for a better senator from Arizona.
A pastor and a senator. And the sad part about it is that Senator Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham, who challenged the credentials of the Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, had no problem endorsing this guy, Herschel Walker, who couldn't put two sentences together.
Core, we may end up like every other week we do this or something.
Georgia,
I can't promise every week, but I'll do my best to do it because I love doing this.
And I'm proud to be a citizen of Georgia as a result of this election.
Next up is Sandra, Indian Trail.
I'll give that a fist. 7 a.m. on Wednesdays.
I'm formerly from Georgia, and I'm quite disappointed with the decisions that the voters made. I use a sock to wipe my butt.
Let's hear from Terry up next, calling from Atlanta. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning.
He used a sock to drop his butt.
I am happy that the people of Georgia voted to retain Senator Warnock, who's done a very good job. He has a very good record, and he stood on that record, and he won. By the same token, I'm disappointed that so many people voted for a flawed, ineligible candidate that the Republicans put up.
Yeah, she mentions ineligible. It's a very good possibility that he wasn't even legally allowed to run in Georgia because he lives in Texas. He either committed tax fraud or he committed election fraud, one or the other.
Themselves. There were facts that were brought out about.
Yeah, we had Mr. Cartoon where I was at.
The margin of victory for Warnock was too slim to ignore the fact that people voted for Herschel Walker.
I mean, I heard a lot of people make that point, ma'am, but as we found out during coverage last night, the Republican won by 19 points in 2004.
However, the cult effect
I said 5 points, and it's getting close to 5 points. There's still 2% of the vote out.
As it continues to diminish, people
Which original Power Ranger am I?
For who he really is, and that the Republican Party will gain some.
I think when we used to play Power Rangers on the
many years,
playground, I always had to be the
was a failure. And
Blue Ranger.
I congratulate Senator Warnock. We're very.
I've told this story before. Power Rangers came out when I was in 5th grade.
Had a very good Senate record and shall continue.
I pretty much hit puberty in between 5th grade and 6th grade. So 5th grade, I'm on the playground playing Power Rangers. 6th grade, I come back in that school. I'm ready to crush some fucking pussy.
Ron in Fairfax, Virginia. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, I'm really enjoying this morning's show. It seems like there's an awakening possibly happening. Maybe Georgians are better critical thinkers than everyone else. There seems to be awareness that both parties are horrible, and that, like the one caller from LA was saying, that whether it's Democrat or Republican, there's still all this homeless.
I just got weird. I wasn't already weird, Quinn.
Was such a circus. The characters,
I have a tendency to overshare. I'm sorry.
Horrible. They were just like characters, and with all the advertising, the one caller talked about, we're just being played by tens or hundreds of millions of dollars of.
Oh no! I didn't say I was crushing pussy in 6th grade. No.
The voters who
I was a loser.
Bored by these.
I did not crush any pussy in 6th grade. I wish I could be crushing pussy.
Just stop voting for these people. That would be my recommendation.
And to be clear, Ron, you're an independent.
9th grade, I was still a loser and wasn't crushing any pussy.
Generally, what's your guiding rule in terms of choosing candidates? What do you go by?
Yeah, I'll tell.
Oh, did God of Buffalo pop in here? Fucking A, D-Live.
This goes way back, but 2000 I voted for Bush. It was a huge mistake. After the war, I was.
Love you, God of Buffalo. Always glad to see you.
Like, we got to get rid of this guy, so I voted for Kerry. And after that, I felt horrible. Like, I voted for this guy who voted for the war in Iraq. So I vowed I will never, ever vote for a candidate who's made some horrendous mistake, such as voting for war or.
So you just don't vote anymore.
Pushing us toward war with Russia. So I just map candidates to my values. If none of them match my values, I vote third party, libertarian, neither, or I just don't.
What's your thoughts on the age of consent?
Yes.
Thanks for sharing that with us this morning. Wall Street Journal this morning. Trump Organization found guilty of criminal tax.
So, Quinn, my usual shtick is I do a news rundown show Sunday through Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll cover all the top stories of the day, and also I'll make a bunch of jokey jokes.
To pay some executives in car leases, apartments, and cash. The jury Tuesday found 2 Trump Organization corporate entities guilty of all.
So we actually do like a pretty structured news show.
Criminal tax fraud and falsifying business records. The 2 entities could face a total of more than $1.6 million.
Then I can like grab a cat and show you a cat. This is Maynard James Kitten.
Mr. Trump, who while facing civil lawsuits and criminal investigations, declared his 3rd consecutive presidential bid last month. The conviction could compound the weariness from some Republicans who want to move on to other party leaders.
Dolphin, get in the Discord. Posts all kinds of links.
Grand Blanc, Michigan. Donald, good morning. Democrats line.
Good morning, America. Good morning to C-SPAN.
and I would like to congratulate Mr. Warnock on his win in Georgia. How
Congratulations, Mr. Warnock.
Tells me this country is.
Now they will have a guest come next hour, so they'll bring a guest in, and the guest will take calls.
They go on this thing about Joe Biden's son, but they fail to realize that the Russia investigation, proved that the Trump campaign was willing to work with the Russian government. They said they didn't find proof on Trump.
Voting is never going to solve all your problems. That's one of my things that I preach about on the show, is that, like, you know, voting is essential. However, it is not the only thing, and we are in desperate need of organizing. And, like, people want to talk about votes in the presidential election. That's the least meaningful vote you cast. That's the least meaningful vote you cast. Your votes matter far more at the local level. Your school boards are being taken over by fascist groups like the fucking Proud Boys.
Richmond, Virginia, Democrats line. Go ahead. It's Bertha. Go ahead.
Hey, Bertha. Good morning.
I am so glad about Reverend Warnock, even though I don't live in Georgia. But one thing that really bothers me about Trump is the fact when you just brought up about the fraud and the guilty. You know, and I hear a lot of the Republicans say, well, you know, he was not guilty, but anything associated with his name, he is guilty. I don't care if he didn't sign for anything, but he knew exactly what was going on. And I think that he should have been in jail by now, because let me tell you one thing.
You're talking about Trump?
He went out and stole money from a bank. I guarantee you they would not be pussyfooting around and just allowing all of this to keep going.
She almost said fucking around.
When are we going to put him in jail? I don't care if he was the president. If he do wrong, like if I done wrong, I would be in jail. I don't understand why do money always play a part in whether you go to jail or not.
Back to the Hunter Biden
capitalism
for a moment. This is a tangential story to that. This is headline from the New York Post this morning. Elon Musk fired.
Yes, like they're making a big deal and calling Jim Baker a Republican or a Democrat, and saying, "Oh, we outed a Democrat that was at Twitter."
General Counsel James Baker.
First time I ever heard James Baker's name was during the Bush administration when he was arguing for like torture.
Quote, in light of concerns about Baker's possible role in suppression of information important to the public.
Yeah, he was I think he received his first appointment during George H.W. Bush's administration, but he worked under Democrats and Republicans.
About the events surrounding the laptop suppression scandal, and the lawyer's explanation was, quote, unconvincing. Baker, a former top FBI lawyer, was discovered to be secretly vetting the internal Twitter documents before they could be reviewed by journalists, leading to a delay.
I don't understand how he was a lawyer for Twitter and he was vetting the documents. I don't know how he was secretly vetting the documents.
Next, we hear from Susan. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing...
Nine Tanky, I've called into C-SPAN, and they asked me about fracking. It made me incredibly mad.
Trump the first time. I did not vote for him the second time. The runoff and the election to elect our senator has been extremely disappointing with both candidates. First of all, in my opinion, and I have some background in this area, Warnock is a sociopath, and Herschel has a personality disorder. So what I did was I voted for Herschel because I thought maybe there was a chance that he would stay on his medicine and be somewhat better. There is no hope for Warnock. And when I look at all of the mudslinging that went on between the two, it was absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And I hate that the fact that Georgia and Georgia citizens had to listen to all of this stuff 2 times. So that's basically what I wanted to say. Because I love Georgia. Mm-hmm.
No, go ahead. Finish your thoughts, Susan.
I love Georgia, but I'm extremely disappointed that
9 Tanky, I was right after the presidential debate, so they were kind of like on point about shit that was a topic, and fracking was a topic in the debate.
I voted for Herschel only because I was so opposed to Warnock.
All right, appreciate your call.
Because she felt that Warnock was a sociopath, which I wonder if she knows what sociopath means.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I have a couple of comments about this. It seems like most people just vote party line, and it really doesn't matter who the candidate is. I've heard a lot of people saying that Herschel Walker isn't qualified, but you can see that that didn't matter in Pennsylvania. People voted the party line. And that's all I want to say about that. And I just want to say on a good note that
He's trying to say that there's something wrong with Fetterman.
country that we see two black men rising to the level of running for a senator.
Oh, also, so I always try to catch the Twitch commercials, guys. So some of you, if you're not subbed, you might have got commercials just now. My apologies.
There's more ahead here on Washington Journal. Up next, attorney and Supreme Court blogger Amy Howe will be with us.
Yeah, usually I try to catch the commercials. I think they're playing right now, so some of you might actually be in a commercial break. My apologies that I did not get to catch it. I like to play them all at once. I would have tried to delay the commercials, and then we would have took a little break. I would have went and refilled my coffee. I'm not a sub, my friend. Can you not tell by my personality? No subbing up in here. It looks like they're gonna have a Supreme Court reporter coming on for the next segment. So we're going to be talking about I assume, first today they're going to be hearing arguments about the case in North Carolina, which is for the Smash. I tried to catch the commercials. I wasn't paying attention just now. I'll let you guys know. I play them all at once, so you get like 3 minutes of ads, and then like you get no ads the rest of the show. I try to be as viewer friendly as I can. I hate ads. Fuck ads. I try to do my best to fuck Amazon over. Usually during the Troll Patrol, during the usual show, we'll play like my ads. Mater, have you not had enough of DM? There's like 3 clips of me on YouTube talking to him for over an hour. Come on. Now, he called in that one time, and I just hung up on him. I'm like, nope, not doing it tonight. Not doing it tonight. Free DM. I'm not the one that made the decision to ban him from the Discord. He's welcome in the chat. He comes in. He came in last night. Dumb fuck. DM means dumb fuck. Not Demon Mama. Demon Mama is based. They're going to have a reporter that covers the Supreme Court, so we're going to be talking about 2 cases. I would assume the 2 cases being argued this week. Today, they're going to be tackling the case out of North Carolina about voting. It's a wild case where they're trying to argue that the state legislature is the only body that can make decisions about state election laws. Instead of the state courts being able to step in and interpret the law, which is what the courts are supposed to do, they're saying only the legislature can interpret election laws. Because like I think in the law it says legislature, but like traditionally everyone has interpreted that to mean the apparatus that we have set up as a government, so it would mean the courts as well. But over the past 2 days, they have been arguing a case about a web designer who never, and here, like maybe the court reporter will explain it.
She's the co-founder and reporter for SCOTUS blog. She's also the co-founder and editor of her own How on the Court blog. Busy couple of days, week or so at the Supreme Court, including today, 10 o'clock Eastern. The case is Moore v. Harper, a very closely watched case considering the recent elections. What is this case all about?
So this is a case that could have a really dramatic effect, depending on exactly how the court rules, on federal elections for Congress and the president. It involves something called the independent state legislature theory. And that is the idea that under the Constitution, state legislatures have sort of near complete authority to regulate these federal elections without interference from state courts. And the case itself started as a challenge to North Carolina's new congressional map. Every 10 years, we have a census, and then the states have to redraw their maps. And a group of Democratic voters.
And there's a whole mess going on with that North Carolina map. There was a dude that was fucking rigging shit. It's a whole big ordeal.
And said that
like he died, and they found his files and found how he was like rigging things in favor of the Republicans.
Adopted was a partisan gerrymander. It favored Republicans over Democrats. They said, even though North Carolina is roughly divided between Democrats, Republicans, and independents, the new map would give an overwhelming advantage to Republicans, 10 out of 14 seats or 11 out of 14 seats. And the state Supreme Court, the North Carolina Supreme Court, agreed that it was a partisan gerrymander and sent the case back for the trial court to draw new maps. The trial court adopted a map drawn by some experts rather than by the legislature. And so the legislature came to the Supreme Court earlier this year and asked the Supreme Court to intervene. They said under this independent state legislature theory, the state Supreme Court can't step in. We have the sole power to draw this map.
And this was done right before the election, correct? Much of this was done earlier this year anyway.
Yeah, so it started in February and March. The legislature came to the Supreme Court, asked the Supreme Court to step in and block the new map that the trial court had drawn. And the Supreme Court declined to do that, but they did agree to take up the case and weigh in on the validity of this independent state legislature theory.
Why do we hear some people in the media write about this independent state legislature theory that it is a fringe theory, critics say? And what do supporters say?
Even the Federalist Society has opposed this.
The whole process.
They point to the text of the Constitution, and there are two clauses. The one at issue in this case is called the Elections Clause. There's also one called the Electors Clause. And they say the text of the Constitution refers to the legislature, and that means the body that makes the laws. It doesn't mean the state Supreme Court. It doesn't mean a referendum by the voters. It doesn't mean a veto by the governors. This is a theory.
Rep Crenshaw.
But back in 2000, and
Devin Heavy, good morning.
Then Chief Justice William Rehnquist wrote a separate concurring opinion that was joined by Justice Antonin Scalia and Justice Clarence Thomas, who's still on the court. And they said
old crusty fox
that they would have ruled for the Bush team, reversed the decision of the Florida Supreme Court for the extra ground that it also violated this independent state legislature theory for the Florida Supreme Court to step in with regard to the recount. And then again in 2020, after the 2020 elections, Pennsylvania Republicans came to the Supreme Court. Some of your viewers may remember that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, because of COVID, extended the deadlines for absentee ballots. And Pennsylvania Republicans said, no, you can't do that. And several judges of the court did not take up the case.
Devin Heavy, just as soon as we came over to C-SPAN, like the next three calls were Hunter Biden, Hunter Biden, Hunter Biden.
At that time, did they mention this theory?
Talk strong.
Yes.
And in terms of the impact of the case, what happens if the court agrees with the Republican legislature? What happens to the districts, redistricting in North Carolina?
So redistricting in North Carolina, if the court were to agree with the Republican legislature, and a lot depends on exactly how the court writes the opinion. They could say the legislature has, complete authority. Only Congress can otherwise make changes.
The freaking frog's gay.
They could adopt a narrower version of the theory that says that normally the legislature has complete authority, but if it has delegated authority to the state Supreme Court or to the governor in a law, then that could trump the full version of the independent state legislature theory. But in this case, like if the Supreme Court were to rule for the legislature, it could go back. The legislature could draw a new map. And an important change in politics in North Carolina was that the North Carolina Supreme Court that struck down the map as a partisan gerrymander was at the time, earlier this year, was a democratically controlled court. that court is now controlled by Republicans. And so even if the Supreme Court were to say, you can delegate your authority to the state Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court could now look at that map and say, that's not a partisan gerrymander.
So basically, opponents here are saying, no, the legislature doesn't fall outside of its own rules. That they have to, if they write the process, that the courts in those states can oversee and overrule the legislature in the case of drawing district maps.
Exactly. They say, yes, when you look at what legislature meant, it meant sort of the whole body that made laws, but that doesn't mean nobody intended when they drafted the Constitution to mean that the legislature is not constrained by the state constitution, for example.
Amy Howe is with us. She's a Supreme Court lawyer. She is the co-founder.
And now we're going to be taking calls.
Her own Howe on the Court blog. 202-748-8001 is the line to call in for Republicans. Democrats, it's 202-748-8000. And for Democrats and others, 202-748-8001. Oral argument in the case Moore v. Harper coming up today, 10 a.m. Eastern. We will have that live here on C-SPAN. Amy Howe, you will be in the courtroom today.
If you guys missed the other day, Alito said some really weird shit about
sort of how
black children wearing Klan robes.
By the Supreme Court to take up.
I found it quite odd.
Who are?
I used what you talking about, Willis, in the thumbnail.
What I'm really listening for is, if there are a majority of the justices.
And then he fucking laughed. But to be fair, it sounded like the rest of the court laughed as well. We just have audio. You don't get video.
Look to a version that gives the state legislature really complete unfettered authority, or are there some narrower versions that the Supreme Court might be prepared to endorse?
This argument's happening at the same time that Congress is considering, may not get around to, potential changes in the electoral count law. What is Congress looking to do in changing that law?
This is unfortunately not my area of expertise, the electoral count law, but I think it's certainly something that I'll be looking to see if that comes up at oral argument as well, and what the justices have to say.
I'm surprised they're not actually talking about the
748-8001, the line for
designer, the web designer.
748-8000 for Democrats.
Maybe they'll get that. Maybe they'll get to that in the next segment.
202-748-8002. Let's go to Cairo, Missouri. Jim's on the Democrats' line.
The overall argument was stupid, but I've got to play to the sensationalism on YouTube.
I'm really disappointed by the Supreme Court. The stolen seats that the Republicans filled.
Okay.
Collect a prize, let's say, for a contest that you didn't win. What I'm saying is Kavanaugh and Barrett should have stepped down out of fairness. The idea that everything has to fit with the Constitution, quaint, unworkable. Originalists, would Clarence Thomas really like to go back to black people being three-fifths? Only voters, white landowners, male. I think.
I don't know that Clarence Thomas knows he's black, to be honest with you.
Of public desires. Thank you.
Okay, Amy Howe.
Old pube can, I like to call him.
Any thoughts?
Thanks for listening, and thanks.
What are you doing, C-SPAN? Come back to us.
Your comments?
Let me bring the Marquette University, the law school, does a regular polling of what people think about the Supreme Court, the approval, disapproval of the Supreme Court. It's quite stark between now and 2020. The approval rating in 2020 for the Supreme Court was 66%. Now it is 44%. The disapproval.
How was it that high in 2020?
On the other hand, 2020 was 33%. Now it's 56%. What do you think is causing that?
I do think it is a reaction.
What's causing all that?
The Dobbs opinion, in all likelihood, and the sort of hullabaloo.
Probably just low information.
The Dobbs opinion.
It's odd to me that low information people are watching C-SPAN, but
with the court, obviously, one thing that I've been blogging now about the Supreme Court, reporting and covering the Supreme Court for over 20
Lebanon
years.
most certainly is not chill right now.
It's really interesting to me because
it is totally not chill.
Stretches of time in which the Supreme Court's approval ratings did drop, because of the Citizens United decision in 2010, because of the Shelby County versus Holder decision. And then the Supreme Court tended to sort of recover, bounce back. And so what I'll really be looking to see is what happens.
I've been sus about it pretty much my entire adult life.
Or the year after that. And
I was 16 or 17 in the year 2000 when all that shit went 17.
Of the Alito opinion in the Dobbs decision, there was another reported leak by the New York Times. Former anti-abortion leader alleges another Supreme Court breach about the Hobby Lobby case. Can you tell us what's going on in the court in terms of...
Did we cover this on the Troll Patrol? I don't even remember.
So with regard to the Dobbs leak, relatively quickly after the leak itself, the Chief Justice John Roberts indicated that the court's marshal, who is retired military, would be conducting an investigation, and that is
Mater canceled.
We know about
so that's
the
ongoing.
leak investigation. It is, as far as I know, ongoing. I don't know whether or not the results of the investigation will be made public when there is a result, or in what form. Whether or not that too could leak. Talking about the...
Oh, I know it's a thing, Quinn. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, they're all trying to cancel culture me.
Years ago, the Supreme Court's lawyer, the Supreme Court...
Have you heard the freaking news? YouTube, Facebook, and all of big tech are trying to do a cancel culture on Justin Freakin.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
Help the channel stay alive and grow by subscribing or following.
The letter said, gifts from friends. Having said that, the House Judiciary Committee is holding a hearing tomorrow on Supreme Court ethics. It's focused on the accusations in that New York Times article about the Hobby Lobby leak. And then the other thing that is going to be sort of interesting, every year Chief Justice John Roberts on December 31st at 6 p.m., right before everyone goes out for their New Year's Eve parties, releases his year-end report. And some years that addresses things like how the judiciary is coping.
I was really interested in what she was saying, but I couldn't pass up that opportunity for a joke.
Last year, it was about ethics reforms and changes to the court. And the Chief Justice actually said to Congress,
I don't know if I agree with abolish the court, but it definitely needs some reforms.
People will be watching to see what he says in the wake of all.
Mater, since you're not going to be here for it, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, go ahead, light one up, tip one back. It's all right to have a little fun before you hit the sack. I am Justin Freakin.
We'll
see you tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Troll Patrol Live.
It's Gabriel up next in Apex, North Carolina.
What up, Gabriel? Good morning.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation here. So I wanted to ask a specific question that has to do with Rucho and the prior case, which was 2019, where essentially Chief Justice Roberts ruled with a lot of the current people who, will be a big factor today in terms of the jurisprudence on the court. But they ruled that federal courts could not step into state matters. So they sort of, Rucho, as an election law, made it where, the actual state courts were the only check on partisan gerrymandering. I'm just wondering how those two are going to be at alignment or out of alignment.
Great question.
And I wanted to kind of get your thought on that. I also wanted to ask if there was anything as a secondary, if there's anything that, just given where the court is with Clarence Thomas and really the shielding capacity that's there, like his inability to recuse himself, what can be done by Congress in order to add a layer of protection to really regulate the Supreme Court? Because it really seems like it's entrenched and that there's nothing that can be done, especially with lifetime tenure. It's one of the only entities in our federal government that has that sort of status, and it's dangerous.
Federal judges have lifetime appointments.
So those two questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think you raised two important points. The first one is your discussion, and it was just something that I didn't want to go on for too long, so I didn't mention when I was talking about the case earlier of Rucho versus Common Cause. And that was a case out of North Carolina involving partisan gerrymandering. And as you said, the Supreme Court, in an opinion by Chief Justice John Roberts, ruled that federal courts cannot consider claims of partisan.
They're too aggressive on her compressor on her microphone.
They're too political. And
also, you guys will get some inside baseball. I am a broadcaster. I'm a motion graphics artist, a voiceover artist, sound engineer.
Courts, this all.
Sometimes we'll be talking about a really serious story, and I'll start critiquing the broadcast.
partisan gerrymandering under the state constitution. So that is another thing that I will be listening for today.
I mean, I ain't going to turn down any peanut butter pretzels, but they're not like my go-to thing.
On behalf of the challengers and on behalf of
my stoner snack would be like
say about their decision.
I like graham crackers with Nutella.
And then you also talk about what Congress can do with regard to the Supreme Court and ethics. And so there is a code of ethics for other federal judges that does not apply directly to the Supreme Court. And so that is, I think, what Congress is looking at, is the possibility of adopting an ethics code. As a practice,
I would recommend getting on Amazon, type in condenser mic. God, I can't remember the brand of it. Hit me up on Discord and I'll tell you you can get one for like $30-$40. And
but they'd be able to
or a USB plug and play. It is an amazing sounding microphone.
In a divided Congress.
You, Amy, how you also covered one of the oral arguments earlier this week, the court taking up another case from Colorado dealing with
anything but what I have.
And businesses not working with them. Conservative justices seem poised to...
I like me some graham crackers. I'm a big fan.
...who opposes same-sex marriage. What's involved in this case?
Yeah, so back in 2018, when Justice Anthony Kennedy was still on the court, the Supreme Court heard the case of
get you a if you get into the $40-$50 range on like a gaming headset, you should be pretty good. You'll get a pretty good sound quality out of it.
Because he said that would violate
if you want to go the headset route.
Beliefs. And the Supreme Court in 2018
knock up Justin. What?
On a relatively narrow ground. They said that he was treated unfairly.
You live in sexual
by the
anarchy.
Colorado administrative agency that considered his case because of a hostility to his religion. So his case was over. The Supreme Court...
That fuck his religion. Is that hostile enough?
This time in the case of a website designer named Lori Smith, who creates custom websites, and she wanted to expand her business to include custom wedding websites. But she, like Phillips, is a devout Christian who says that she believes that marriage is limited to one man and one woman, and so she does not want to create custom wedding websites.
Now, to be clear, she doesn't even do this yet. There's no victim in this case.
To make that clear. She said, I will serve gay people, LGBTQ people in other contexts. You want to create a website about an animal shelter, that's great, but I'm not going to do same-sex weddings. She says that the Colorado...
So she doesn't even run this business yet. She is a web designer.
Violates her right to freedom of speech. And the Supreme Court agreed to weigh in just on whether or not that violates her freedom of speech, not her freedom of...
I was trying to do economically efficient. I think it's CAD is the brand over on that you can get on Amazon for like $30. It's a good sounding microphone for fucking $30-$40.
The three liberal justices, Sonia
Sotomayor, is always really good though. And fucking I miss my fucking Zoom recorder.
Hypotheticals trying to illustrate.
Once upon a time, I had a really badass one that had multiple inputs and everything.
Smith lawyer Kristen Wagner, and
it wasn't always the best recorder to use. I'd rather have like a Tascam or something if you're out doing field mixing for a movie or some shit like that. If you're like interviewing somebody on the spot, fucking a Zoom recorder.
Discrimination laws for the first time if we rule for Smith. And then the Chief Justice John Roberts said, if we do not rule for Smith, we would be compelling speech in violation of someone's beliefs for the first time. So it seemed that they were sympathetic to Smith. They seemed to perhaps to be inclined to draw a line between sort of service providers who provide what they call consider speech, like website designs or designers or artists. And then on the other hand, people who are providing what they regard as services to same-sex weddings, something like they said, the guy who provides the chairs or is the limo driver for the wedding, because that's not speech.
Yeah, and that term was used a bunch of times in that argument, obviously, the term compelled speech. Briefly, what does that mean?
That means when the government, forces you to say something with which you disagree. And the government would have to pass a very high bar in order to do that, and they say it's not met here.
So in essence, this boils down to they're making it a First Amendment case.
Yes, it is. Smith is arguing that compelling her to create custom wedding websites for same-sex couples when
do not discriminate in your business practices.
Religious beliefs violates her right to freedom of speech.
Let's hear from Paula here in the nation's capital, Democrats line.
Good morning.
Morning.
I just had a comment and a question. 59 years old, lived in
D.C. all my life. When I started paying attention to the Supreme Court, which was in my teens and learning about it, I just feel like there is a gap between what we as a country feel the Supreme Court should be and what it is. For as long as I can remember.
Ma'am, I don't think most people in the country actually know what the Supreme Court is or does.
Of course, to the nominations, to how the court rules, and then there is this. I feel this notion that the court can be, because it's a legal body, above it all. And I think that is not the case. And maybe at some point before my life, it was playing out in that manner, but not that I've seen. That's my comment. But also I had a question for Ms. Howe, and this is totally my ignorance. Has anyone ever been removed from the court for
one impeachment and it didn't succeed?
Bad behavior.
You mean impeached?
And thank you.
They'd have to be impeached, correct, Amy Howe?
Yes, that's right. And justices have been, but it's extremely rare.
Do you want to comment at all about her view on the partisan bent over the years of the court?
Sure. I'd be glad.
Extremely. I mean, like, as far as I know, I think we covered this not that long ago on the Troll Patrol. There was one justice. He was impeached, but he was not convicted in the Senate, and it came down to like one vote.
At the other side would be they would say.
And he had some wild nickname.
The Supreme Court is not.
Oh shit! I got to look this up.
Necessarily to reflect the will of the people. The Supreme Court justices are not elected; they're appointed by the president and then confirmed by the Senate. And I think the argument would be they have life tenure.
Yes, Justice Samuel Chase was impeached but acquitted in the Senate.
That might be unpopular.
But he had a nickname.
Crofton, Nebraska. Up next, this is Jeff on the Republican line. Good morning.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in the federal government staying out of the state business.
Oh, I knew it.
Let the states do however they want to do their, and control it through the courts or whatever they have to do. However, we really have a problem when it comes to the federal voting. We need to
Old Bacon Face was his nickname.
Friday,
Old Bacon Face.
Monday, and make it something like where we have a national holiday and people can go vote.
I agree with this dude.
Card and vote with paper ballots. And if you have a...
Fucking Tones coming in here giving out the subs again. I love you, Tones. Good morning, my friend.
Or you have a legitimate reason why you can't make it, you can use a mail-in ballot. But anything beyond that, people need to go, and we need to get this in control and start getting it under control, because it's getting out of... I mean, it takes too long to get things counted, and there's just too many people out there. Like myself, we do have there's a lot of problems out there that seem like people.
All right, Jeff.
What problems?
Keeping on elections for a moment in the Supreme Court, are there other election-related quick cases coming up before the court this term?
There's not this term. One thing that sort of in response to your caller that I think is an interesting point talking about the partisan gerrymandering case and the independent state legislature theory, there was an article last week in the Washington Post by a Princeton University professor named Sam Wang, who said that the case that's before the Supreme Court involves a Republican-controlled
Everybody Sam Wang tonight.
Benefit Republicans. But he said sort of if you look at the national map, that a ruling in favor of the Republican-controlled legislature in this case would actually benefit Democrats more, because there are a bunch of blue states and swing states
Wang
have not drawn partisan maps because they are constrained by the governor or by referendum by the state Supreme Court. But if the Supreme Court were to remove those constraints, then would be able to draw maps that would favor Democrats.
Question on that from Jim in Winter Park, Florida, who asks, isn't it true that both political parties gerrymander their states?
Yes, that's why we should do away with the gerrymandering to begin with.
Democrats.
Absolutely. Gerrymandering is a bipartisan issue. A couple of years ago, when the Supreme Court heard another pair of partisan gerrymandering cases. One of them was from Maryland, challenging a map drawn by the Democrats in that state.
All right, let's go.
It is my position that that is the exact reason why we should do away with the practice, period.
Yeah, thank you for taking
We can put the data into a computer and let it draw the districts without any kind of political
the
bias.
Supreme Court anymore, unfortunately. I think it's swung way too far to the right when you take into consideration the Federalist Society spent $1 billion pushing their candidates. And Trump, you got credit for putting 3 of them on there. That's questionable. I guess it was all legal, but it was a little underhanded the way that one came down. And I mean, Arnold Ziffel could have done that. And then you take into consideration that you can get 52 senators, Republican senators, with 42 to 50% of the total vote cast in this country for senators. I don't really think it represents the will of the people. And as you just stated, maybe that's not the case. But it should not represent the will of 1,000 or 2 Federalist Society people who can pick who sits on the Supreme Court for life, which is the scary part. They're there for life. Thomas has been there, for 40 years? Probably there another 20. And I just don't feel that that's right.
It's not 40 years exactly. 89?
Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching.
You obviously cover the court. You've argued before the court. What do you think that most of us who just listen to the oral arguments, don't sit in on the case, read the newspaper, read your reporting on the court? What do we miss about the court's function and its role?
I mean, one thing that has largely flown beneath the radars, although less so in the last year or so, with the Supreme Court's decision not to step in and block the Texas abortion law, is what's known as the shadow docket, which is the Supreme Court hears oral arguments, and those arguments are now live streamed, including by CSPAN, which is wonderful because it does open
Wish there was a camera, though.
access to the court to everyone. You can go to the Supreme Court if you can stand in line and listen. You can read their opinions on their websites, but a lot of action happens outside of the normal process on what's called the so-called shadow docket, the emergency appeals that come in asking the Supreme Court to step in. And the Supreme Court has been somewhat responsive to the criticism that it can't just sort of swoop in, issue an order that blocks a government program and without any explanation. But for example, they're hearing oral argument. Sometimes they'll fast track some of these cases rather than simply rule on them based on a couple dozen pages of briefing. But there's a lot going on behind the scenes as well.
The court heard a challenge a couple of weeks ago to the federal immigration policy. A number of states challenging that policy. What's that case about?
Yeah, so this is a case. There are roughly 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States who could be subject to deportation. And so the Biden administration adopted a policy to prioritize who they're going to deport. They said, we're going to deport suspected terrorists, we're going to deport people who have been convicted of serious crimes, and we're going to deport people who have entered the country recently.
Okay, so if they're a terrorist or they've committed a crime, just prosecute them?
Challenge that policy in federal court in Texas as
why would you send somebody who might be a terrorist to another country? You're going to boot them out of the United States.
The federal law requires the Biden administration.
You can pissed off. That's how you create Mexican Joker.
The criteria, and they said, and this costs us, the states, money because we have to pay for education, we have to pay to incarcerate some of these people, we have to pay for health care. And so the question is whether or not this Biden administration policy can be allowed to stand. But there are also important questions, and that is, in and of itself, an important question because the Biden administration says we can't deport everyone who's subject to deportation. We have to prioritize. The immigration officials have always had discretion to decide.
I like the Joker vote.
If we have to deport everyone who we pick up, that will in fact keep us, they say, from being able to focus on the people who need to be deported the most. But there are other important questions in the case, including about whether or not the states can bring this lawsuit at all in the first place. The states say, this has harmed us. The federal government says, it's only harmed you indirectly. And what the gist of your argument is that anytime a state suffers an indirect injury of like even $1, then you can march over to federal court and file a lawsuit, and that's going to be unsustainable.
All right, here's Steve calling from Chagrin Falls.
What up, Steve?
Ohio, Democrats line.
Nash, everything I've had Insignia has been all right.
There's a number of things that come to mind here. The one, with respect to, I think the court has become...
Got a lot of problems with you people, and now you're going to hear about them.
And the fact of maybe these conservative interest groups doing their various vaccine things to influence the court and so forth is maybe a good indication of that. But I think it does go back to Bush versus Gore when the Supreme Court swoops in and ignores the state dominance in governing how they do elections. And that was probably the beginning of it. But the other one is this website situation now, or case. It's interesting because there's no other who she brought the suit up. Nobody asked her to do anything, and
oh yeah, the fucking religious organization asked her to do it.
But my question regarding that.
Oh, he's saying that there was no video. I don't know how she has standing
about free speech. And if somebody has a belief, a religious belief, that they don't want to be involved in promulgating some sort of speech, okay, making a website that doesn't agree with their viewpoint, well, then what about a newspaper publisher? And somebody wants to advertise something in their newspaper, and they say, no, I don't agree with that. That's against my belief system. Is that what the court's opening up here, that people can just pick and choose the things they want to help other people communicate? So the communication platforms...
Hold on, I think Smokey's whining.
And how we try to persuade people about things, that's a whole ball of wax. And if the court just comes in and makes a decision on a case that really has no case, it's somebody's belief that they don't want to do something that nobody's asked them to do, they are really opening a can of worms.
Okay, Steve, we'll get a response.
Yeah, so one of the points that you raised, the idea that Lori Smith has never actually tried to offer wedding websites to anyone and has never turned down a sex couple, that is an argument that the lawyers representing Colorado and some of the justices were sort of making. It said, normally we deal with facts, and we don't really have a lot of facts about how this is going to work, suggesting that perhaps the court should send the case back to the lower court. There didn't seem to be a lot of traction for that idea, but certainly...
I would think she doesn't have standing. You would have to have some harm inflicted on you in order to have standing in a courtroom, and it makes no sense to me.
Politicized. We are at an interesting point in this.
Oh, Sky Comet, do tune in tonight. We have a story of a restaurant who has started refusing Christians.
But we are at a point where each of the justices really kind of reflects the sort of ideological bent of the president that appoints them. And that has not always been the case on this Supreme Court. In the period since I started following the court, you had justices like John Paul Stevens and David Souter, who were both Republican appointees who, by the end of their career on the Supreme Court,
justices tend to get more liberal
of the court's liberal wing. And you had Justice Anthony Kennedy, who was not a member of the court's liberal wing, but did sometimes cross over to join the liberal justices on important issues like affirmative action and the rights for LGBTQ people and abortion. And that, as one of the earlier callers said, that became kind of a rallying cry for conservative Republicans who have been focused for decades on changing the makeup of the court, was to say things like no more suitors, like when they had a nomination available, to make sure that they were picking someone who was a serious conservative justice.
In fairly short order after the Dobbs decision this summer, bipartisan and bicameral support came behind the legislation to enshrine in law the right for same-sex marriage, interracial marriage. Why was that necessitated? Why did some people feel that was necessitated after the Dobbs decision?
That's a great question. In the Dobbs decision, the majority opinion by Justice Samuel Alito sort of carved out a special role for abortion. He said that our decision regarding abortion does not implicate some of the other what we call rights to privacy, including the right to contraception, the right to same-sex marriage, the right to
but that's coming.
That have been the subject of the Supreme Court's decisions. He said, so those are different. This case is just about abortion. But in a separate concurring opinion, Justice Clarence Thomas suggested that because those rights rest on kind of the same foundation, this right to privacy, which is not found specifically in the Constitution, but the Supreme Court has read the Constitution to
interpreted it to mean
might
that.
also be in jeopardy because of the Supreme Court's reasoning in the Dobbs decision. And so there's a reaction, to both the reasoning in the Dobbs opinion and to the Thomas opinion in particular, because Justice Thomas, in the past, he has written these separate opinions that sometimes seem to reflect only his views, but as the Supreme Court gains, has become a more conservative court, some of the things that he has suggested over the years that the Supreme Court should do, then the Supreme Court does in fact take up and do.
Becoming more conservative, but they gained a new liberal member, new Democratic appointee, anyway, in Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. You're in the courtroom a lot. What's been her role?
KBJ.
Arguments that you've seen.
She has been very active as a new justice. She has jumped right in. She has been one of the justices sort of leading the response to the use of history when you're interpreting the Constitution. There's the idea that you look at the text of the Constitution.
I like that they put the three assholes together back here.
Who drafted that text?
Three Trump appointees.
When it was drafted in the late
Not that there aren't other assholes sitting there like Alito and Thomas.
19th century. And so that was the idea of history and tradition were at the center of some of the court's rulings last term in the Dobbs case, in a case called New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, involving the Second Amendment. And so she sort of turned around relatively quickly and said, well, two can play.
Yeah, Warlord, you're correct.
Asking in a decision about voting rights, wasn't the...
Other than I think like Sotomayor was on the end there, and like Thomas would be the longest serving.
With regard to race, but to help African Americans.
I believe Server McGritty is talking about Joe Biden.
Creative, the website designer case with a lot of different...
Joe Biden actually voted no against Thomas.
And then she has written...
he voted no on Thomas, but he helped bring Thomas to the floor for a vote.
Opinions yet after oral arguments.
There's another one of those political theater kind of deals.
From the Supreme Court's decision.
Gorsuch has been a much better justice than I thought.
To death row inmates.
Well, a couple more calls for you. We'll go to Mike in Bath, New York. Independent line.
Well, Hunter Schlong.
Good morning. I was just wondering if your guest, Amy, there could enlighten us a little bit on the Federalist Society's involvement with Supreme Court appointees. It seems like the six conservative dissenting members are all members of the Federalist Society. I was wondering if she could give us a little bit of an idea of the agenda behind the society. I know Scalia was a member, and of course we know what he did. If she could just give us a little bit of information on their involvement. Thank you.
Sure. I'm not sure, to be fair, that all of the justices are members of the Federalist Society. The Federalist Society is an organization that was formed, now some time ago, I think initially in response to the perception that conservatives were underrepresented in academia, and it became an organization that became heavily involved with the selection and nomination of judges and justices during the Trump administration in particular. And so, many of your viewers may recall that before the November 2016 elections, Donald Trump sort of had announced that he was going to release a list of potential Supreme Court nominees if he were elected president in 2016. I think that he probably had a lot of assistance from the.
It was a smart move on his part too.
Those names, and it is, I think, that list gets a lot of credit for getting Trump over the finish line and getting him elected president in 2016, because I think there were some people, sort of social conservatives, who were perhaps not convinced about this real estate developer from New York who'd supported Democrats in the past. And that gave them a lot of comfort that if he were elected, he was going to nominate, solidly conservative justices and justices in particular, to the Supreme Court, so
that's
that
exactly
they would have a chance.
That's the whole reason that Donald Trump was able to hobble together a coalition. They wanted to use them in order to get these justices on the court.
Good morning.
Morning.
It is my distinct opinion that there is no reason that this case should be before the Supreme Court. There is no injured party. What we are dealing with is a case with a potential injury. So will you give me 3 examples where a Supreme Court has reached down and taken a case on the basis of potential injury?
All right, Don.
I'm not sure I could come up with 3 cases off the top of my head, but as I said earlier, this is certainly an argument that was made. The argument was also made at what we call the certiorari stage, the stage at which they decided whether or not to take up Lori Smith's case in the first place. And obviously there were at least 4 justices who thought that they should go ahead anyway. So, as I said, it doesn't seem to be getting a lot of traction.
Well, we will have live coverage of it all this morning. The case, the North Carolina redistricting case, Moore v. Harper, gets underway at 10 a.m. Eastern. You could hear it live here on C-SPAN television, and Amy Howe will be covering it, of course, for SCOTUS blog and her own Howe on the Court blog. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
More ahead here on the program this morning. Next, we'll be joined by Democratic Congressman Mark Pocan, congressman from Wisconsin, top member of the Appropriations Committee, talking about the upcoming government funding deadline.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I was like, it's a debt ceiling talk then.
Later, freshman Republican Congressman Matt Rosendale of Montana will be with us, a member of the House Freedom Caucus, talking about his priorities for a Republican-led House in January, and his support for Kevin McCarthy. That's next.
Yes, there is a force the vote style rebellion going on inside of the Republicans right now. The Freedom Cock. Yeah, Pocan is cool. Tom Hartman, one of my heroes in the broadcasting world. You wouldn't think that's somebody I look up to based on my style, but I love me some Tom Hartman. I gotta see if I can hit the fucking commercial break, and I don't think I can yet. I can't hit the commercials on Twitch. Try to get those out of the way while C-SPAN is taking a little break here. Plus, I kind of have to pee-pee. And since Dan Crenshaw isn't here to let me pee-pee in his open eye hole, give me that eye pussy, sir. No, Warlord, I will not be able to make it. At some point in time, my ass is going to have to go back to bed. You want me to wake up to be able to do the Troll Patrol tonight, right? We got a German coup to talk about. No, we don't want to do the show tonight. Also, be sure to tune in Thursday night. I played a clip of this comedian. Her name is Goldie Hoffman. She did a parody of the Dave Chappelle monologue from Saturday Night Live, and I was really hopeful it would be good. And I thought it fell flat. So we're going to have her on to talk about it. Here we go. We're going to go back to Washington Journal here.
This morning to talk about things ahead in the lame duck and also what's ahead in the 118th Congress. Congressman, I thought we'd start with a vote later this week in the House, the final vote it should be, on the same-sex marriage bill that's been approved now by the U.S. Senate. We touched on it having been necessitated by many, by the decision by the Supreme Court in the Dobbs decision.
Yeah, necessitated by Clarence Thomas's remarks that this also should be something that we're perhaps opening up. And I'm glad that we're doing this, especially in a bipartisan way, because all it's really doing is affirming what the current law is. In fact, I'm a bit more shocked by the people who voted against it, because that's saying you don't support the current law around marriage for interracial and same-sex couples. But it's important.
Sir, have you met some of your colleagues in Congress?
There's enormous credit for the very effective behind-the-scenes bipartisan work that she did on this. And it's the right thing, and it'll ensure that no Supreme Court can play politics with any couple's marriage.
And among other things, our guest is the co-chair of the LGBTQ plus caucus on Capitol Hill, also a member of the Appropriations Committee. And Congressman, will we see a spending bill done on the current fiscal year spending for 2023? The current measure is set to expire next week, the 16th.
Yeah, Congress does nothing but on deadlines, so I'm not surprised we don't have it yet. But, this is the 101 of Congress. If you can't pass the budget bill, it's the one bill we have to pass every year is our appropriations bills. And the omnibus is really important to get done. If I were the Republicans in the House going into a new session with a very, very small margin like we've had, I would want to get this off the plate so they can get started fresh with whatever they're going to be moving forward. I think
Hunter Biden investigations.
In the Senate,
they want to see that schlong.
The senior appropriator, who's a Republican, are both leaving. They would like to get it done. So I just hope we can do our jobs and get that appropriations bill across the finish line, even if it's not next week.
They want to see that Hunter Biden schlong.
Ready to be here through the 23rd. As long as we get it done, it is that important.
You'll be in the minority. Democrats will be in the minority.
Looks like a man that lives in sexual anarchy.
For the
you
US
live in
House
sexual
anyway,
anarchy?
New leadership up and down on the Democratic side, led by Hakeem Jeffries of New York. Aside from being in the minority party,
I hope there are people in the chat. They're like, why does he have that picture of Hunter Biden? Just had it handy.
He worked with the president very closely on his agenda. Things like the infrastructure bill, the Build Back Better agenda, the Inflation Reduction Act. We did a lot of things this session. In fact, 4 big bills that I would argue any one of them would have been the biggest bill of a previous session.
Quinn, I think I'm a pretty big dork.
Democratic Senate on getting those things done. So I'm hoping that with this small margin the Republicans are going to have with some of their more extremist elements causing some issues, that we could talk to some of the more reasonable, moderate Republicans and have them.
Are you saying I'm giving handies to Hunter? What?
At the end of the day, the only thing that's important is we get things done for the American people. And I think, this extremist element that I think is going to be the tail wagging the dog for the Republican caucus in the House, we've got to figure out ways to work around that very, unproductive kind of obstructionist element within.
I don't know. I need a precising definition. What exactly is a dork?
Calls and comments at 202-748-8001 for Republicans. It's 202-748-8000 for Democrats.
A contemptible, socially inept person. I am not a dork.
2002. Congressman, where do things stand?
I might be contemptible, but I'm not socially inept.
Ukraine, that $38 billion request
contemptible
from the White House.
Probably.
Yeah, I think that is going to be packaged with one of the must-move bills as we're hitting these final weeks as well, and it's important that we continue this funding. I think this is something that
dork is a foreskin.
Moving forward, but
this is something. This goes back to my time in the philosophy department in college. Is like
in Ukraine.
You need you need to know what you're talking about. Let's find out exactly what dork means.
So far, $13.6 billion in March of this year, $40 billion in May, $13.7.
You can accuse me of being a lot of things.
In September. Republicans,
but socially inept is not it.
Perhaps a majority of House Republicans.
I may not go out of this room very much, but if I do, I'm a social butterfly.
Spending in Ukraine. What are your concerns about that?
Well, I hope that they're sincere about wanting an audit for all defense spending, something that people like Barbara Lee.
Yeah. The Pentagon failed yet another audit. It's like the 20th time they've done it in my lifetime.
You can't pick and choose right now, especially while they're at war. What is happening right now is something that we have to work with our allies, and Ukraine is an ally, and I hope that we'll continue to support the president's efforts. And don't forget, part of supporting the president's efforts means we're not sending troops there, and that is something I think there's also bipartisan support to not do.
Let's get to calls for Congressman Pocan. Here is Debbie. First up, Roswell, New Mexico.
It sounds like they kind of want to send troops.
Hi, good morning. Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I have a question, not about policy.
Is this me?
I think I'm going to go completely off topic on this one because I've been trying to get through every time a Republican or a Democrat gets on. My question is really simple. I want to know why and how, because I think you guys are all hustlers. Every single one of you that come in, you got normal salaries, and within a few years, you're all millionaires. And I want to know how.
That's not exactly true.
This is happening. I mean, you weren't millionaires in your regular life. So how is it that once you get into Congress or the Senate, all of you are millionaires, and you're one of the richest ones? I looked up all of you guys on Open Secrets, and none of you had these kind of salaries before. So what are you guys doing that you're making $1 million?
Debbie, we'll hear from the congressman.
Yeah, so Debbie, I think you have the wrong congressman. I'm not one of the richest. In fact, I'm probably one of the poorest around here.
Yeah, I'd say.
My colleagues are millionaires. Many of them come into Congress that way. I am not. So, look it up again. It's P like in Paul, O-C-A-N. I think you're wrong on that. But to be fair,
when she said that, I was a little taken aback. Pocan?
Like I said, half of my colleagues are millionaires already. And, there is a problem with that. I mean, I'm someone who comes as an everyman, off the street who still has the bills to pay and lives check to check. And I think if you had more people who were representing their constituents who had that background, you're right, decisions might happen differently. But it's always good to get the right information. You didn't have that.
All right, let's hear from Carl on the Republican line. Wayne City, Illinois.
Good morning.
Pocan with the shade.
Okay, I have a question for the representative. I want to know that, I support supporting Ukraine, and you call Putin a war criminal, and that we need to help Ukraine support their borders and keep Russia out, right? So how's that any different than what Joe Biden's doing to America right now when we got open borders here? We might not have bombs and missiles flying over our borders, but we have fentanyl.
He's a representative.
Our borders from China, Mexico, and the cartel's running it through. So when do we call President Biden a war criminal?
So that comparison's ridiculous, but I'll try to answer the
Thank you, Pocan.
Thrust of what it is. Yes, we need to do more to stop fentanyl coming into our country. Most of it is coming in at the ports, not just across
Public loser rating.
Spots.
Good morning. Good morning, trolls who are not high enough for this shit. I am not high enough for this shit.
More around this, and we have passed bills, and I'm sure we will continue as a Congress to try to do things to stop those efforts. But to compare that to Ukraine, well, that's a little bit crazy.
All right, to John in Arona, Pennsylvania, Democrats line.
Undie fan?
Yes, sir.
I fuck people's names up, but thank you for being a freaking follower. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Justin Freakin. This is a special stream we're doing. Usually I'm on Sunday through Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. We do a nightly news rundown. But I've been testing out doing Prime Minister's questions and C-SPAN call-in on Wednesday mornings, and this has been quite fun. Washington Journal is always hilarious.
Energy prices may be going down.
Yeah, John, you bring up
the dude that said he wiped his ass with a sock earlier. That's been the best part thus far.
Right now, they did
Undine. There we go.
Instead, they increased maximizing profit.
They might be a perv,
and that's why
you live in sexual anarchy.
It was about a year ago, March, when they had the deep freeze down in Texas, and Texas didn't invest in their infrastructure, so the refineries went down and prices went up, and they stayed up. And we have
pulled the Mr. Sacco out. Well, Public Loser, thank you for the raid. So glad to have you here. I don't know that I follow you.
So
let me make sure that I do.
It's nothing that Joe Biden's doing. It's nothing that any political party is doing. It's something that, quite honestly, the oil companies are doing, and they have no respect
for
friends
the now.
People. So I don't disagree with you. There is more that could be done right here, and relying on any foreign countries for oil isn't a good idea. To me,
can somebody shout out Public Loser for me?
In electric vehicles in the future, and I think that's one of the things we.
If you guys are not following, go follow.
Bill and other bills.
If they raiding me, they bound to be based.
I think that really is the best end result for us.
A call from your district to Madison, Wisconsin. We go. Jean Ann on the independent line.
It could be a dumb fuck.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so very much
for
taking my call. I'm an independent, and I've got a lot of questions.
Let's hear them.
First of all, with regard to appropriations and so forth and accountability, I think, yes, in the Ukraine accountability, on the spot is not a reasonable option. But what about the COVID?
Oh, yeah, we got to do like Afghanistan 20 years later and look back and like, well, guess we fucked that one up.
Ask for special dispensation by paying a minimal fee of a couple $100 to be excused from their taking of the American money. Secondly, with regard to the border, I'm kind of embarrassed that our president didn't bother to go to the border when he was in Arizona. You need to look and see what's going on.
You're in Wisconsin.
They're not being adequately vetted. I'm sure there's some wonderful people there that are coming through, but
you need to look at what's going on the border in Arizona.
Cause our country big problems.
Says the woman who's like next to fucking Canada.
Your reaction.
Sure. On the first one, Gene, I'm not sure what you mean by the special dispensation they get for a few $100s, so I can't answer that. I apologize in advance. On the second part, the real problem fundamentally is we need to have a comprehensive law dealing with the border and immigration. When I first came in 5 sessions ago, there was a bipartisan bill that came out of the Senate that I believe had 69 votes that would have had protections at the borders as well as a pathway to citizenship for aspiring Americans.
Sexual
it would be
anarchy.
a great thing to work off of again. The problem is John Boehner at the time was the Speaker. Republicans were in charge of the House. We never took
John Boehner.
And now after Donald Trump, it's too toxic to take up anything that's normal.
That's what got Boehner ousted, is he wanted to do a deal with Obama, and Obama was willing to cut entitlements.
Comprehensive way. So
it actually worked out for us that they weren't able to get their grubby hands on Social Security and Medicare.
Countries where
but they also couldn't do a deal on comprehensive immigration reform.
So there certainly are things that should be done. But, the real problem is we can't get back to that point just not even 10 years ago where we had bipartisan 69 senators voting in one way. That's, I think, what we've got to try to get back to.
There is some reporting on a potential immigration deal. And if you've seen this, Congressman, the Post is Washington Post reporting.
I'm sorry, Smash. I'm sorry you got caught by the ads.
Deals. Reporting that
they don't match up well with the C-SPAN breaks.
Have outlined a potential.
I don't have control over them until we get to like 10 till the hour.
Undocumented immigrants brought to the United States in exchange for at least $25 billion in increased funding for Border Patrol and border security. The bipartisan framework, which
so we may get a deal on Dreamers.
Title 42 for at least
fantastic. I'm glad that
centers
they're going to act on that, but I mean that is just a small portion of the people who are in limbo here in this
Senate
country.
Operates with very different rules. Don't forget, many of their rules were invented by people who wore white powdered wigs to work. There certainly are still senators wearing wigs to work, maybe not the white.
Yeah, once again,
the problem is
Pocan cracking jokes up in here. I'm sorry, Smash. I tried to catch the commercials, but they didn't match up well with C-SPAN.
The normal committee process where you actually have buy-in and actually infrastructure to put a bill together. I hope that we could do, like I talked about the 5 sessions ago when they had a bill that had 69 votes. It would be great to do that again. I just think
nice.
Might be so
stick around long enough, somebody can throw you a gift sub.
Happen, especially if it's done in a lone wolf strategy. We need fewer lone wolves. We need more people just working together.
Question for you from Jimbo in Bakersfield, California, who asked, does Congressman Pocan feel comfortable?
You're fine, Smash. That's why I try to, I'm not going to begrudge anybody for not being able to get a sub. That's why I try to play all the commercials at once. Nobody misses any content.
Period. It's this.
It doesn't match up well with C-SPAN though, unfortunately. During the real show,
like Wisconsin, and
we get those commercials out of the way.
If you've appropriated the funds and we voted to spend the money, we don't have a second.
Yeah, especially here coming up on Christmas time. I don't want anybody spending money on my channel. Go spend money on your kids, on your family. Buy them something cool.
The obstructionists to obstruct the normal process and make it not work, and we should just get rid of that. Period.
Unfortunately, playing the 3 minutes of ads, that's how I get 50% ad share revenue.
Yeah, the vote is when any rest of us would sign a contract.
I can only get like 35% if I play any less than the 3 minutes.
Decision whether or not you're going to mail the monthly mortgage payment or the.
I want all that Bezos money I can get.
The fight is so. I would hope that we would find a way to permanently get rid of it. But
no. Spend that $5 on somebody in your family for Christmas.
Uses leverage
or whatever you celebrate.
And I think it frustrates so many people, including me.
Let's hear from.
Came to the wrong channel for fun music videos. Not what we do around here.
I'm actually
sorry, Quinn.
You guys continue to spend.
I hit you with the worst fucking content.
Obviously, Ukraine has something. Zelensky has something on Biden and Hunter that hopefully the new Congress will find out. But with this next $40 billion,
I know the 4-chord song
to Ukraine. Why are we protecting Ukraine, and what do they have on Biden and Hunter?
I had to say this to DM the other day. It's the Caspian Sea. It's oil from the Caspian Sea. It has nothing to do with fucking
money. It's wasting lives.
Them blackmailing. Yes, I hit you with the worst content.
About long COVID and Fauci. Long COVID, they're saying now could be a $2 to $3 trillion cost, and you guys aren't talking about that. Oh, and one other thing. SUNY Upstate Hospital in Syracuse knowingly gave away defective PPE to its staff, which got a lot of nurses and doctors sick. Maybe you guys should look at that.
Several things there.
Absolutely.
Okay, would you like to respond to any of them?
Well, first of all, there's a cure to Fox News derangement syndrome. It's called the remote, and you can put on a different channel because anyone who thinks that the Ukraine is about the rabbit hole of the Hunter Biden story, don't forget Hunter Biden's already been investigated, but I'm sure.
Yeah, I feel like that caller was just misguided on that point.
In the next several years, Russia invaded Ukraine. They've come in and caused atrocities.
We do not give a shit about Russia invading Ukraine other than Ukraine is where they're doing the processing for the oil that's coming from and the natural gas that's coming from the Caspian Sea. And if Ukraine falls, Georgia's almost certainly going to fall, and there's no way that we have a path to be able to bring it's something like 25% of the world's oil and natural gas from the Caspian Sea.
For all those reasons,
so we have to have those two countries stay loyal to the U.S. Now, I'm not making a value judgment whether that's a good or bad thing. But that's the reason why.
Taking my call.
Yeah, he was right about the long COVID, though.
I wanted to ask the representative about. I was going to ask about the Twitter thing, but Elon Musk and all that. I guess that comes on the back of the previous caller.
Yes, come on people's backs. Do not come inside them.
You've been trying to get down.
Take proper birth control measures and come on people's backs.
Under collusion, I believe that you have 100% collusion. We'll find out when the hearings start, like you stated. And one other question, as far as the southern border would go,
Quinn, I don't take requests, and that's why you can't post links in the chat. But you can post in the Discord, and if it's a song, we've got a music channel and everything. I need to be more active in the music channel. I'm sorry, guys.
Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you, or vice versa.
Fool me, can't get fooled again.
He agreed to give amnesty if you sealed the border, and that never happened. The fence has never been.
Jones don't have to pull out. He got the snip.
Ronald Reagan was in office and agreed to the first overhaul of the immigration system. I would really, really, really not like to see the debt ceiling and all this other stuff held up due to the Democrats wanting something, and the Republicans, for nothing, really.
All right, John, Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, there's a lot there, so I'll take the last line. That might be the easiest. I agree with John on we shouldn't be holding things up over this debt ceiling issue for the very reasons I mentioned earlier. I mean, it is kind of an arbitrary second vote that doesn't happen in state legislatures, doesn't happen in our own finances, how we pass something. If we've passed an appropriations bill and we've spent the money through a vote of Congress, there shouldn't be another backup vote that allows.
Lennon was indeed right. Imagine there's no heaven.
That's why we should be
easy if you try.
Ceiling vote.
Obla dee, obla da. Life goes on.
The future.
Headline.
No, why don't you get a job?
January 6th committee, the House January 6th panel to issue criminal referrals.
Yes, Mox, I know about the Jim Baker story. We're going to cover that tonight.
Congressman, what do you think the legacy?
Jim Baker, who argued for torture in the George W. Bush administration.
Well, I think
But don't get it wrong. He worked for both Democrats and Republicans.
That information to explore whether or not there will be criminal charges brought against people from the activities around January 6th, and I think it was extremely valuable in one kind of connecting all those dots and reminding people what happened. What amazes me the most is all of this is on video. We saw it and we heard it not just personally like I did, I was here, but everyone did around the country together. And for people to try to and then change.
I was watching it live on stream. You can go back and see my reaction to a coup happening in real time. I think that's pretty fucking neat.
Remind people, if we don't remember history, and that's not even history, it's so recent, things will happen like that again. And
because I had like dual.
Think it's important.
Well, I mean, I've got multiple monitors, but I had like dual screens up. I had the Senate and the House, and we were going back and forth between the two.
And make sure it never, ever happens again.
And I think we were on the House and the Senate recess. I'm like, why did the Senate recess? This is odd. And then when we come back to the House, we start hearing like banging and shit in the background. I'm like,
This gentleman, you had mentioned something about the oil. I'm reading right now that the Biden administration has issued.
No, on January 5th, I would have just been doing the normal news.
Since the end of World War II. Okay, so we got that issue there. But it's okay to...
I might have done a piece on the rally. I might have played some video from it, possibly.
Just wanted to throw that out there.
But we were just doing a normal news show. It was just normal to me. I think I even warned everybody that it was going to be a boring day that we were going to be covering on January 6th. And fuck was I wrong.
We also need an accounting for the 2-point-whatever trillion that the Pentagon cannot account for. Okay? Y'all are wasting our money. That's my money. I want to know what my money's going to. I have a right to know that. Okay, the spin that both of the parties, the uniparty, does, we're not falling for it. Okay, everybody's
the uniparty.
It's time for accountability.
All right, Congressman, you talked about auditing, your concerns about auditing in the Pentagon. What other response do you have to our caller?
Well, and I think, she's adding her voice to why we should do that. We audit almost every other program, and that's a good thing, right? We should audit it. It's taxpayers' money. When it comes to the Pentagon, we never do. They say they're not able to do it, and yet it's such a large expenditure of federal dollars. So, this is something that people like Barbara Lee and I and others have asked for a very long time. In fact, I think there's bipartisan support to do such a thing, and we really should move forward on it. So I do agree with the caller. I mean, we should have.
I'm pretty sure like producer Dave and I had a discussion about it, and I think I was like, no, it's just going to be ceremonial. It's not going to be anything going on.
Georgia on the
but once again, I'm doing electoral politics. I'm a wonk. I'm thinking about it from.
I just want to make a point that
because like Dave wasn't covering the proceedings in the House and the Senate. That's what I was covering,
as you mentioned, and I think it's the job of the Congress to educate the population. For example, there was a call on oil production. How much oil was the U.S. producing a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, today? And just
you can look that shit up, dude.
A chart of all that on the immigrants. How many immigrants are coming across the border? And I know we can find that data, but I don't have time, and nobody else has time. And obviously, all the callers don't have time. One woman called about your income and your wealth. I know the data's out there, but there ought to be a simple way. Most of the callers don't realize it. Tell the callers right now. 70% of all federal spending is spent. Is this not correct? You confirm it right away, I'm sure. 70% of federal spending is on old people in the military. Okay, 70% when you count Social Security, health care, Medicare is old people, and the military. That's 70 cents out of every dollar the federal government spends. The people calling you don't know that. And it's up to Congress to educate the people, and I don't understand why you guys don't do a better job at educating the public.
Yeah, Jay, it's a great point. I think we do try.
Man, have a fantastic day.
I see it, and I'm a journalism major from college, there are so many media sources and how people get their information now. On social media, you'll only see
throwing you the fist,
essentially.
Always left fist.
Will only reinforce your worldview, and you'll never see other things like maybe facts in some areas, and that's part of the problem. So we actually often are on the floor of Congress with charts and showing the expenditures, but if that's not picked up by...
Yeah, this caller has never seen a Katie Porter hearing.
Media now isn't so mainstream because of all the other news sources, the 24/7 cycle that's out there. People can just see the information they want. That's why I think, as you rightfully mentioned, many people are pretty uninformed on the actual facts, but they're very informed on some of the spin. And that's our real problem, I think, is that people just get the news that they're they're supposed to see according to the algorithms of much of the social media, and that's something we really do have to figure out how to work on, Jay.
Well, I use the opportunity to promote CSPAN.org, because if you want information about Congress, you go to CSPAN.org. Right at the top of the page is a link to Congress. So if you missed today's session, the House or Senate, you want to watch past sessions, you want to watch past.
Yeah, C-SPAN's like, let us get a plug in here.
At CSPAN.org. Castlewood, Virginia is up next.
Yeah, that's what they meant, entitlements in the military. Those are the two biggest expenditures of the government.
To the congressman is, he said earlier on the show that he would like to see the Republicans work with the Democrats to get stuff done. But it seems like the new normal is, for the last several years, is investigations from Russian collusion. Now we're going to be doing more.
Hunter Schlong.
When's it time to set these investigations aside and do something for the American people?
Yeah, Jeff, so a couple observations. One, I mean, some of these investigations just get a lot of attention from the media, but it's not like every committee does investigations. In fact, out of the major, maybe 22 or so committees, I think Oversight and Government Reform probably does the most, because it's actually their main mission. But other committees might do some aspects. But, you know, like on appropriations, we don't do investigations. We're actually talking about doing that budget bill that we have to get done, hopefully by the end of the year. So I think sometimes
there's a Wendy's, we know.
What those
and apparently it's a really nice penis,
with the
so I'm told.
Republican Congress, because the majority is so tight, it's going to be hard for them to even pass bills, because they're going to have a handful of additional votes like we had in this last session. Therefore, they're going to probably double down on doing more investigations, because it doesn't take a majority in Congress to do that. So unfortunately, I don't think you're going to get away from all the investigations because of the makeup of the incoming majority for the Republicans.
He didn't mention Benghazi when he was talking about the frivolous investigations.
A portion of what's actually done in Washington.
Congressman Mark Pocan of Wisconsin, Democrat, reelected to his 6th term for the 118th Congress. Congressman, thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Pocan. That was a lot of fun.
Everybody.
And a Republican view from Capitol Hill coming up next here on the program. Congressman Matt Rosendale of Montana will be with us.
From Montana.
Freedom Caucus. He'll talk about
moving to Montana soon.
In January, and if Kevin McCarthy should lead it.
We'll be talking about the Republican version of Force the Vote when we come back. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. This is not our normal setup here on the Troll Patrol. Usually we're on of an evening. We do Sunday through Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Also on Friday, we do a comedy show called the Friday Night Freak Show at 10 p.m. Eastern. We have rotating guest hosts. Do a lot of bullshit and shenanigans on that show. Sometimes you'll catch me on. I'll be listening to music, playing video games, but that's very rare. Usually we're doing news content. I will pop on when we have breaking news. We've done things like watch the verdict in the Chauvin trial. Obviously, we covered January 6th live. We'll cover votes. There's a major debate going on the floor of the Senate or the House. We'll cover that. Benghazi. But yeah, there's usually a news rundown, 8 p.m. Eastern. Also, I take phone calls in Discord. Sometimes we get chuds coming on, and I yell a lot. I call people morons. That happens. I have multiple drops for calling Republicans idiots.
Do you think we're stupid? You think we're fools?
Yeah. Even Rush Limbaugh called it before he died.
As a conservative, it's getting harder and harder to not look like a kook.
Oh, shit. For anybody who hasn't heard it yet, I'll summarize my political beliefs for you. I would give anything in the world to piss in Dan Crenshaw's open eye hole. So whatever political philosophy I need to sign on to, whatever party I need to be a part of, that lets me piss in Dan Crenshaw's open eye hole. That's the position I'm gonna take. If becoming a commie is gonna let me piss in Dan Crenshaw's open eye hole, I'll become a commie, goddammit. Oh, shit. C-SPAN still on commercial here. We'll come back here in just a second. We'll have a Republican. A Republican will be taking comments. If you were a little late joining us, we did Prime Minister's questions to start with. We watched Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister of the UK, take questions. I can give you insight and kind of tell you what they're talking about with U.S. politics. I don't know shit about fucking UK politics, so I didn't know jack fuck about what was going on. We were just making jokes about the British. And that was a lot of fun. And I have some weird sexual obsession with Rishi Sunak, apparently, because I keep making jokes about how I want to fuck him. Or let him fuck me. If he's a top, I'll be like, I don't bottom often, but okay. If that's what you're into, if that's what gets you in bed with me, okay, sir. I would invite both him and Suella Braverman to the orgy. Enough for this shit. Look at this chud.
The U.S. House. He's a Freedom Caucus member. He also sits on the Veterans Affairs.
He's part of the Freedom Caucus
Committee. Congressman Matt Rosendale, welcome to Washington Journal.
Thanks for having me on today, Bill.
Let's start with a.
He's part of the Freedom Caucus.
With the 118th at Congress and the election for Speaker. You have said in the past, you told CNN that you would vote for a Kevin McCarthy speakership under extreme circumstances. There's reporting this morning from the Wall Street Journal. There was a meeting of the Republican conference of your fellow members yesterday. What came out of that meeting?
Well, you're still going to have pressures back and forth on who is going to end up being the eventual speaker for the 108th.
It's going to be Kevin McCarthy.
And there is still a lot of opportunity for us to actually make some changes and have someone who wants to be the speaker to support those changes. There's a
Chip Roy of Texas is who the Freedom Caucus is actually backing against McCarthy, but that ain't happening.
Washington is broken, and they campaign on the fact that Washington is broken, and it truly is. And part of the reason for that is that we have consolidated the power of all the decisions into the hands of just a few select individuals, and that's the Speaker and what they call the Rules Committee in Congress, which is a group of 9 people that make most of the decisions about what legislation is actually going to come to the floor, what amendments will be allowed to.
Yes, that's how committees work. Yes.
And then the rest of the body simply is in a position where they have to vote yes or no on it, and that's it. So you don't have the collaborative process.
Well, you're going to have like 538 members.
Ever served in
or is it 539
states have been able to participate in, and so by doing this, by consolidating that power, by isolating the ability from or freezing out the ability.
It's more than that, actually. There's several non-voting delegates.
Don't have the ability to represent our constituents at the same level as those 9 individuals that have consolidated all the power. So what we're doing is requesting that there is to diffuse this power back to the body by having a couple of just basic changes. Number one, that we have single subject legislation come before Congress, which would eliminate a lot of these deals that are made back and forth to buy votes virtually, and then to allow what they call open rule back on the House floor so that each member would be able to propose amendments to legislation as long as they were germane, as long as they would pertain to the specific legislation that had been introduced and brought out to the floor.
I don't know that I disagree with that, but like doing away with committees would be fucking.
You tweeted about this a couple of weeks ago.
It would be a free-for-all in there.
Each member of Congress has
would never get anything done.
Equal participation in the legislative process. That will only happen if the House returns to rules that govern this legislative body before Nancy Pelosi took control. Kevin McCarthy isn't willing to make those changes. Have you made any inroads with Leader McCarthy?
No. Unfortunately, he hasn't been willing to make those kinds of changes. We hear a lot of rhetoric. We see a lot of fanfare taking place. We see a lot of emphasis given to the oversight committees as we go into the 118th Congress, and that's all really important. We've seen, time spent down on the southern border. That's really important. But as far as changing the actual functions,
you're from Montana,
on the House floor, we haven't made any progress in that place, and that is how we're going to change Congress. That's how we're going to restore order, and that's how the constituents across the nation are going to have equal representation.
And to be clear, those rules wouldn't just follow, the ones you're proposing wouldn't just follow for Republican members on the House floor, but for all members, correct?
That is exactly right. We're trying to make sure everyone has an equal voice in Congress. Any time that you try to set a process up that basically benefits one party or the other, typically that's going to get turned around, and that's why we have this whipsaw effect on a lot of legislation and a lot of the just the conduct that takes place up here. So reestablish. We're not talking about dramatic, radical changes. What we're talking about is reestablishing regular order to Congress so that we can have this collaborative process restored. And I personally believe that it will bring collegiality back to Congress that we haven't seen for decades.
Our guest is Congressman Matt Rosendale, represents Montana in the U.S. House.
I'm not exactly sure about that.
Your calls and comments. For Republicans, that line is 202-748-8001.
But what I am for is that dude fucking shit up on the Republican side.
For all others, independents and all others, 202-748-8002.
For those of you who lived through the whole forced to vote thing, this is like the Jimmy Dore wing of the Republican Party.
A potential call for an audit on spending on Ukraine. A headline from the Washington Post reflects that mainstream Republicans back Marjorie Taylor Greene's audit of military and economic aid.
I don't disagree with that.
The Foreign Affairs Committee was defeated in a 26-22 vote because of the.
But isn't that part of the audit of the Pentagon, which they keep fucking failing anyway?
Sending a message to Ukraine that America's support for the war was in question. How do you support that measure by Representative Greene?
I absolutely do. We're nearing $80 billion that have been sent to Ukraine. And
cock,
there's not been
the
any
freedom
type
cock.
of accounting whatsoever. Well, we now see that this whole FTX cryptocurrency issue has arisen. It's my understanding that as they filed the bankruptcy documents, that there was investments coming into FTX from Ukraine. There's a lot of money that is traveling.
Peace out, Server McGrady. Have a great day, my friend.
Able to give an accounting of, and if you're going to authorize United States taxpayers' dollars to go overseas, then we need to know what is happening with that. I personally have voted against the additional funding to go to Ukraine. I think it's tragic that Russia has instigated an unprovoked war and invaded that nation. It has killed people. It has dislocated a lot of people. However, we have a lot of problems here in our own country that are going ignored. We have an invasion taking place on our own southern border right now. We have 4 million people that are in our country illegally.
You could have won me over, sir. You could have brought up an actual issue we face as a country.
Fentanyl that have streamed in over the southern border. We had 105,000 people that died in our country last year from drug overdoses, and the vast majority of that can be.
And you would fight against every single public policy that would help prevent that.
Components came here from China. So we have our own invasion taking place, and I think that we need to focus on the problems that are taking place in our country, and for those funds.
I started talking about testing kits and safe injections. Like, remember when Biden did the safe smoking kits? These motherfuckers lost their goddamn minds. They don't give a shit about drug overdoses.
Mike, make sure you mute your volume.
Yeah, turn your volume down, Mike. Is
yes,
me?
Thank you, and thanks for taking my call. Congressman, I just want to say to you, when you guys, Republicans, start talking about the border and the fentanyl crisis, I mean, those are talking points to me because these problems have been around for decades, not only under Democrats but under Republican administrations. And when you guys had the power when Donald Trump was in office, you had the Congress and the Senate, and you didn't do anything about the border.
Didn't do shit.
You didn't solve that problem, and you were talking about building some fantasy wall.
I mean, they made it an issue going into the 2018
Don't try to say
midterm.
like this is a Democratic problem. All of y'all are guilty with that. And this
caravan.
This happened under Republicans, not Democrats. So stop playing games with this. And the thing I want to say with you is, if Donald Trump announces that he's going to run for president after all the garbage that he's been involved with, all the criminal activity, all the immoral things he's been doing, the racist things he's been doing, you would fall in line and you would vote for him. So you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. And you guys should...
Hey, this motherfucker's got a hard dick right now, just you describing Trump.
To measure things, and I think you would come out better.
Mike, we'll give our guest a chance to respond.
Thank you. So, Mike, I appreciate you calling in, but quite frankly, your facts just aren't right. If you look under the Trump administration, there were several policies that were put in place, and it dramatically reduced the illegal immigration that was taking place on the southern border. The wall system and security system that was associated with it was helping. It wasn't completed, though. So we have
the wall system
holes and gaps in that system yet. But the policies are just as important.
That's his way of describing a fence.
Southern border now 3 times and met with local law enforcement, with Customs and Border Patrol, with local ranchers and farmers, which actually is more than the border czar or the president has done. And
he's pretty on point, Tones.
Is that the Customs and Border Patrol are saying, you really don't need to send us more people. You really don't need to send us more money, because if you do that, all it's going to accomplish is allow us to process more illegal immigration faster and release these people into the country. What will help our country is to continue funding the security system on the southern border.
Don't send us money to be able to
re-implement several
move them through the court systems faster.
The Remain in Mexico policy that the Trump administration put in place was simply to say that if you've come to our country and you're trying to claim asylum status from fleeing your country of origin, that rather than be processed and released directly into the United States, that you will be detained on the Mexico side of the border.
Why?
And just by that simple fact being put in place, 75% of the people that were detained in Mexico ended up going back to their country of origin. And it probably reduced the amount of people.
Good possibility that they were killed.
The United States trying to claim asylum status because they know that the likelihood of just being released into the country.
And here's the sad truth that you won't acknowledge, fucker. Is that they're fleeing conditions that were almost certainly caused by the policy of the United States towards their country.
We need to apply pressure back on the Northern Triangle countries because a lot of the folks are coming from there. But again,
they are coming from countries that, if you look up the history of, the U.S. probably did a coup in.
Mike, your information is just wrong.
And created the instability which has led to the conditions they're facing now.
But with your re-election here in 2022, you will represent just the eastern part of Montana as the state gained a new seat for the 118th Congress after the 2020 census. How does that feel?
It's great to have a partner, actually. So now Montana will have a lateral voice bill. Pre-1990, we actually had 2 representatives, and the 1990 census and reallocation of Congress, we ended up losing one of the representatives. So for the last 30 years, we have had only 1 voice. Interestingly, in order to get the population...
Well, I mean, you've got 2 senators with a fucking...
state.
What, there are 20 people living in Montana?
Of the state that I will be representing. So as of January the 3rd, I will go from representing the largest district in the nation by population.
At least 1 coup. Mox coming in with the facts, always keeping me grounded.
To having the smallest district in the state by population at about 540,000 constituents.
And someone no stranger to Capitol Hill, Ryan Zinke, representing the other part of the state. Let's hear from
the former Interior Secretary under Trump.
Yeah, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good morning.
It's me.
Yeah, I just got a few. I mean, the Democrats are complaining about what the Republicans are going to be doing.
I keep making Majority Report jokes. I even have my Majority Report shirt on right now.
But everybody forgets for the last 6+ years, they've been investigating Trump, wasting taxpayer dollars. You got Democrats like Schumer,
Trump is guilty.
Nadler, All of them found said that we have all this evidence, and they have nothing. They wasted our taxpayers' dollar, and this is on both sides of the party, on both sides, Democrats and Republicans. You know, I think why the term limits ever stopped, the American people didn't vote it out. We need term limits. Right now, we got all these dinosaurs in D.C.
Rich, 2 senators,
they get to vote their own.
250,000 cows and 170 people.
It'd be nice.
Move to Montana.
I think all
I encourage you guys, especially if you have some professional class friends, move to a town in Montana and take it over.
So, I would like to think Alan doesn't think I'm a crook. Okay, I've 2 years in. I just was reelected.
I think you are.
A lot of subjects there, so we'll go with the first. Term limits. I personally believe term limits are a good thing. I think that the American public expects their representatives to come up, serve for a certain amount of time, and then return back home to their farm or their job and live under the same laws
their farm
they created. I do not believe that our founders intended for anyone to have a career in politics.
Because we just have so many small farmers in this country.
As far as the Republicans and Democrats,
not a corporate farming system
on oversight and research, there is too much time spent on that. Especially when we have a Department of Justice that has demonstrated that they are very selective and, quite frankly, very biased about their determination on who they're going to charge and prosecute. Congress doesn't.
I agree. It's all poor people and never coming after the rich folks.
On bad practices and corruption. And I would like to think that as we go forward into the 118th Congress, that we monitor how much time is spent on government oversight. I would like to see it, reduced down to about 20%, and to actually take the balance of the time to work on things that are critically important to this country. I think our domestic energy production is very, very important. It ties directly into everyone's cost of a living. We've seen gasoline and diesel fuel prices.
I knew he would be one of those bitch about the gas prices types. He was just talking about Ukraine.
An act really by the administration.
No, he didn't want to support Ukraine. You can't have it both ways.
By just about 2 million barrels a day. And that's very problematic.
By the way, the cost of a barrel of gas is insanely low right now in comparison. Oh, shit. C-SPAN having to ask, are you still watching? That's how long we've been doing this. We had to get an ad, too. And it's Aaron Rodgers? What the fuck? Anti-vax motherfucker?
700% increase in drug overdose deaths as a direct result of fentanyl. Of arrests.
Gas prices are expected to plummet to around like $2.50
it is a big problem, and it's
before
Christmas. If someone in your family is one of these folks that died, we're losing a generation of young people as a direct result of fentanyl overdoses that is coming in from the southern border. So
we're losing a whole generation of young people, but there are other factors, not particularly fentanyl, though that is an issue.
Good and positive agenda for the American people.
Congressman, as a member of the Freedom Caucus on Capitol Hill in the U.S.,
the Freedom Caucus.
Your reaction to some criticism yesterday on our program by Don Bacon of Nebraska. Briefly, here's what he had to say.
Multiple votes for Leader McCarthy.
What up, Bacon?
And as long as he wants to stay in the fight, we're going to support him. But if at some point these 5 or 6 people will not give in and not be part of the team, well, we're not going to be held hostage by them. And
Tones, I am sorry. I hope you feel better and have a fantastic day.
Of the conference. So I will work across the aisle to find a Republican that we can mutually agree to. So yes, but it was misreported initially that I would.
Love you, buddy. We'll see you tonight.
I said an agreeable Republican, and I do think there are moderate Democrats willing to work with us to find, the best Republican possible. And I think it's important to do this because you can't be held hostage by 5 or 6 people out of 222.
Representative Matt Rosendale.
Sure, Representative Bacon is certainly entitled to his own opinion on
Bacon.
And we want to find a coalition speaker as well, someone that we can trust, someone that...
Don't forget, we mentioned it earlier, the only Supreme Court justice to be impeached, Samuel Chase. He was cleared in the Senate by one vote, and his nickname was Old Bacon Face.
Over 50 people that voted against earmarks. And so there's somewhere between 36 and over 50 people that are not happy with the governance or the agenda that he has laid out. And what we want to do is make sure that each of the members of Congress, this isn't about Matt Rosendale. This is about each member of Congress being able to represent their constituents on equal footing instead of going back to the same old days of being in this exclusive club of just a few people that are able to dictate the agenda of Congress.
Let's hear from...
It's called capitalism, sir.
In River Grove Heights in Minnesota. Good morning.
Good morning. I don't know who I'm speaking to, but I am a federal retiree.
You called C-SPAN, fucker.
Postal Service. I'm impacted by something that is called WEP. We've had so many changes in Congress since that became effective during the administration of Ronald Reagan. We can't get it straightened out. It affects my Social Security. I do not draw my full entitlement because of this law that was put in place way back when. We keep on trying to get this fixed.
He's talking about the windfall elimination provision.
Congress are waiting for us to die off.
Okay, Congressman Rosendale, any familiarity with that?
I have not. I have to tell you, Bill, the way that Lai was just describing it, it sounds like a requirement that says if you earn a certain amount of income, that your Social Security income is reduced by, a certain amount as well. But I am not certain. I think that does deserve, if that's what he's talking about, I think that does warrant having some consideration given to it, because if you try to incentivize people to stay out in the labor pool and you want them to be incentivized to do so, then you certainly don't want to take away income that they had earned on the backside.
So somehow this is the thing to cut people's Social Security when they're teachers. It's for teachers, firefighters, police officers, and postal workers.
And, I agree with you. The fact you got to have single issue bills that you pass. I also think that Congress should be held responsible for not always fulfilling
a lot of cool. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I'm used to being on at night. Good morning.
The Congress Bill of Defense hasn't been done. Should be held responsible for that. And that, I can't remember what the other thing was. But, passing a budget. You should be held responsible for that.
Well, I'd never heard of that. So, I don't exactly know what it was. It apparently was trying to prevent people that made too much money outside of Social Security from getting Social Security.
Is provide for a common defense.
If Reagan did it, it probably sucks, though. I mean, come on.
And you were so right. If the federal government focused on the things that they really are obligated to take care of, like the common defense, like making sure that the states can have commerce back and forth across the states, then we wouldn't have nearly as many problems, nor nearly the amount of national debt that we have acquired right now, which is nearing $31 trillion. Single subject legislation, I think, is critically important for us to get back to.
Oh, yeah, and you deserve your money, Rich.
It eliminates all of this deal making that goes back and forth in Congress right now, but it also provides a lot of transparency in government. If you bring a piece of legislation up and everyone has the ability to really thoroughly discuss it, then the American people know what is contained within that legislation. When you bring up 1,000, 2,000,
but you're talking about something that just crippled the fucking country, dude. Not all 500, and however many of you it is, because there are non-voting members
contained within them, including
all of you fucking jockeying back and forth. It's going to take forever. That's why they break it down into committees.
If I cannot
specialized committees
exactly
and
what's
people
going
with,
on, how much
and that's
spending
another
is
thing.
gonna
You
be,
want people with
contained within it, then
focus.
I'm not going to support legislation.
So
like that.
you're
And so
saying like the 10
points
people that are on
Clarence makes are
the
very
Ways
valid.
and Means
Next up
Committee
is Brooklyn, New York. Alexander.
are focused on specific issues of banking and economics.
Taking my call. I guess what I just would like to say, yesterday Republicans lost Herschel Walker.
If you're on the Education Committee, hopefully you had a focus in education, that you were a teacher, or that you came from that field.
Of police members that lost their lives while getting, Medal of Honor. And so the Republican Party does have a great deal.
Republicans got snubbed.
An identity crisis on how to move forward. So I think this next Congress coming up, you Republicans have a real opportunity to not only demonstrate what you can do within your party, but really reaching out across the aisle. The Freedom Caucus, it's just shameful that you have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about people reminded, her being reminded of people in slave ships, in the bottom of a slave ship, rowing when talking about electric planes that are being, commissioned in Canada. So it's just the absurdity with which the
I don't even know what he's talking about.
Wants to somehow,
Marjorie Taylor Greene said something stupid. I believe it.
I just find so dangerous, and you just don't seem to understand that we have to move beyond all of this toxic rhetoric. And you can't just normalize the behavior of people like Marjorie Taylor Greene or your former president. And you are going to continue to...
He fucking loves both of those people.
Guaranteed you're going to continue to lose if you somehow think that this is okay with the other half of the country.
Okay, Alexander, Congressman Rosendale.
Alexander, I appreciate you calling in. It has always been my emphasis to focus on policy and not on personalities. And I think if you can do that, if you can have an honest debate about the differences in policies, you can have strong, rigorous debates, but you should be able to come out of the room still having a relationship with those individuals. Again, when I refer back to the state legislature and my time that I spent in Montana, I was elected by my peers as the Senate Majority Leader, and I think that's because I did have the ability to have those discussions with a broad variety of individuals about the policies themselves. While here in Washington, I believe in supporting and promoting and embracing federalism. Most of the things that take place up here should not. We should be asking the states to govern a lot of this policy, and so that's where my emphasis has been, and I'm more than glad to have a conversation, a debate with anyone about things that do need to be taken care of at the federal level. One of the most bipartisan committees that exists in Congress, quite frankly, is the Veterans Affairs Committee. And I've been able to work with my counterparts on the other side of the aisle on a lot of really important issues to make sure that our veterans, once they have served, that they are able to receive the benefits that they earned, they deserve, they were promised.
Absolutely. I'm no fan of the military, but if the motherfuckers are going to serve, you're going to go over there, you're going to break them.
And so there are
sometimes physically and mentally.
But I do believe that
fucking pay those fucks.
Is good. It's healthy. But let's keep it on the policies themselves and not the personalities. And that's where you're going to see progress.
Montana Congressman Matt Rosendale, thanks for joining us this morning ahead of today's segment.
Thank you, Matt. You weren't as batshit crazy as I thought you'd be.
Have a great day.
Still more of the program ahead.
I'd say if we saw him on a Newsmax or an OAN,
we'll have open forum and a chance for you to call in on
be a different story
this morning or other items in the news. Go ahead and start calling. We'll get to your calls.
Open forum. Okay, we're sticking around for open forum then. For some reason, I thought they wrapped up at 10 o'clock.
748-8002.
Open forum is exactly what we're here for, though.
Listening to programs on C-SPAN through...
Can I take a commercial break on Twitch? I cannot. More than likely, they're going to come back before I can take a commercial break. And I'm not going to take one. I'm sorry, Twitch people. I try to get them out of the way all at once. My apologies. I do have to take a PP break, though, so I'm going to hit a break for you guys here. I'll be back in just a second. Hi, I'm Justin FREAKIN. I'm a leftist broadcaster and comedian, not liberal, leftist. And despite what you may have heard from right-wing propaganda, George Soros isn't handing out Soros bucks and funding people like me. There are no Koch brothers, Mercers, or any number of right-wing think tanks funding content on the left side of the spectrum the way they fund people like Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, and Dennis Prager. And YouTube doesn't monetize videos that are controversial or deal with politics unless you're someone like Steven Crowder. So this is an ultimatum. Become a patron. Support my Patreon, or I'm going to become a right-winger and get some of that easy money. You know for a fact that I could be bigger than Charlie Kirk or Jesse Lee Peterson.
Amazing!
All I have to do is talk about how I used to be an SJW snowflake, but the left went too far with their cultural Marxism, and Republicans are stupid enough to buy it, even though this video exists. And you know I'm right, so give me your money or I'm selling you out.
We live in turbulent times. The media is full of deception, conspiracy theories, and fake news. Now, more than ever, it is important to ensure you're getting information from a source that's freaking reliable.
I'm Justin Mullins, and this is the Freakin' News.
Get a breaking or interesting story with a humorous twist in about a minute weekdays, 8 a.m. Eastern on YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey, and more.
I feel like he was there to talk about the debt ceiling, and I don't remember them bringing up the debt ceiling, but then again, I was talking over him a lot. Welcome back. If you're watching on Twitch, you're going to get hit with a commercial break. The Twitch commercials. I apologize. I don't know how I'm going to be able to do. I may have to come on like 10 minutes early or something before we do Prime Minister's questions to be able to get on the commercials for you guys. Warlord.
The Democrat representative.
Here we go. This is open forum. It's wild card, bitches.
The largest majority of fentanyl that comes across the border is not into Texas. It comes through the ports. And if they're interested in fixing something, put more inspectors in the ports.
Buddy, we had an intelligent, reasonable caller.
He diminishes the attempt to let the American people know what Donald Trump did in his attempt to overthrow the government. And to diminish that and to say that it's not important, there's nothing more important than a president who becomes a traitor. And last of all, I would like to say that if they can't decide for things like Roe v. Wade and that thing, put it on the ballot. The American government is supposed to represent the people. Put it on the ballot.
No. Things like rights shouldn't be on the ballot.
Right and what is wrong.
Bad move.
And take the Supreme Court out of it, as well as changing how the Supreme Court justices are appointed so they can't be used politically ever again.
All right, to
that was what the lifetime appointment was supposed to do, was to remove politics from justices' decisions.
Money. I would like to women to kind of speak to the representative to try to tell them. I think that they should make the House and the Senate all sit down when they have all these meetings and talk. We pay them to be there, and I think they should all be in their seats and be there to vote. Not just, say, oh, I'm President so-and-so's wanting to vote, a certain way. I think that we pay them to be there, and I'm hoping they'll change that. And,
yes, make them work like at least 300 days out of the year. Come on.
People can vote each and I liked what he said about, excuse me, about getting their own voice besides just like certain ones saying, well, you have to vote this way. I hope they all can get a voice, even the Democrats and the Republicans.
I just plan to do away with committees is just nuts.
Bluntsville, Alabama, Republican caller.
Bluntsville, this should be fun.
Yes, thank you so very much, and all. Your program very interesting this morning, and with all the different points of view. One of the things that concerns me about our government is the malaise that we have. It seems like we can have our position, and we can state it very clearly, but yet when we look at the other side of the aisle, on both sides, we seem to demonize and criticize, and even our justice system has become involved. Really concerns me. Nobody is listening to each other. I don't know how we can do that except for term limits. That's my comment.
The Republican from Bluntsville talked about a malaise. First of all,
North Carolina. Hello there.
Props on the word.
Good morning, happy holidays to you, and my volume is turned down, so
Great.
you won't be getting any feedback.
Thank you for that.
My pleasure, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you all and view C-SPAN there. The last gentleman that was on, it seems like, I follow news and everything. I know fentanyl has been out there, but now it seems like that's just the main talking point now. Fentanyl coming over. And it's like, I wish these people would concentrate on the real problem, gun violence that's killing people, not the fentanyl. But it's sort of like, well, gun violence, thoughts and prayers, but hey, fentanyl.
Oh, their answer to gun violence is more guns.
The border over here is horrible. And it seems like these people complain all the time. They always forget.
Just another day in mass shooting, USA.
What's the word? I'm free-flowing now. Amnesty.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we forget about that.
Sven Kira?
They're the ones that just want to open borders.
Thank you for being a freaking follower, and I'm sorry if I butchered your name.
Appreciate your show.
It is Wednesday, December 7th, marking the
It's a freaking Wednesday
anniversary of the Japanese military attack, the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
Wait, is this D-Day?
Associated Press Hawaii Remembrance to draw a handful of Pearl Harbor survivors. A handful of centenarian survivors of the attack on Pearl Harbor are expected to gather at the scene of the Japanese bombing on Wednesday to commemorate those who perished 81 years ago. That's fewer than in recent years when a dozen or more traveled to Hawaii.
Is D-Day the invasion of Normandy? Am I fucking that
Pay
up?
their respects at the annual remembrance ceremony. Part of the decline reflects the dwindling number of survivors as they age. The youngest active duty military personnel.
How do you know? You're British.
1941 would have been about 17.
No, that tracks. A British person would know more about U.S. history than a U.S. person. That makes total sense.
2,400 servicemen were
just a
killed,
dumbass American.
which launched the U.S. into World War II. The USS Arizona lost 1,100.
Oh, I guess you would know. I guess it's a big chunk of European history, isn't it?
Hallettsville, Texas is next. It's Mark on the independent line. Welcome.
Yes, God bless all our veterans. And
God bless them, everyone.
Teenager, when I'd go to a grocery store to cash my paycheck, I'd wait in line behind many other people, and I grew up in a town in San Antonio, Texas, and the people waiting ahead of me, most of them were Hispanic, and some of them were illegal, some of them were legal, but the paychecks that they were cashing, they were sending them using the service of the grocery store. They were sending the bulk of their check or the half of it, if not most of it, to another country.
Buddy, how you were standing over their shoulder monitoring what these people were doing? How would you know if they're legal or illegal?
And, how did that benefit America? And by the way, as for
Fuck you, dude. You made all of this shit up.
So they need to outlaw hollow point bullets. If anybody's ever looked into it, they're very deadly, and we need to all be independent or Republican.
Scubba-duck. Good morning, and thank you for being a freaking follower.
System is people for the government, and the Republic system is government for the people.
Next up is Mike in Pittsburgh.
What up,
Good morning
Mike?
on the Republican line.
Yes. I'm looking at this Moore versus Harper case, and historically, it even says in the Constitution that we are a republic. and that we're about individual rights and not majority rule. And this also could take money out of politics because it doesn't cost money to campaign in front of a state legislature. Also, it is in the Constitution because it used to be that senators were elected by state legislatures. So we're a republic. We're not a democracy. That's all.
I am whatever political persuasion allows me to piss in Dan Crenshaw's open eye hole.
Case dealing with the North Carolina election map, the district map there, and whether state courts can rule on maps that govern federal elections. Oral argument momentarily. Live coverage here on C-SPAN and on C-SPAN radio as well. Gus is in Austin, Texas. Democrats line.
What up, Gus?
Yes, hello. Thanks for having me on. I would just like to ask a question that never gets answered. I'd like to know, what is the total cost of guarding our border? And how is that seems like, is that freedom and justice for all, telling people where they belong?
Next up, David on the independent line, Gaithersburg, Maryland. It is open forum. Go ahead, David.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
What up, David?
On immigration seems very timely. I'm appreciating these callers here. I've been an immigrant.
Zen, my friend. I mean, you're talking about mainstream media or something. Like we're sitting here watching C-SPAN callers.
I want to put a resource out there for everyone. Plyler v. Doe from about 1981, 1982. It's a case. Listen to those oral arguments. You'll get the real immigration debate that we still have. It's a poll for employment. There's no enforcement on employers. So we got the right lying about fentanyl and gangs. We got the left expanding asylum and other protections beyond where it should be expanded. If you really want to know, it's always been the jobs and the remittances. The caller mentioned it. But Plyler v. Doe, those oral arguments, they lay out the whole history and about why undocumented kids should go to school for free. Thurgood Marshall's involved. Everyone check it out. Thank you.
And we'll go to Davis, who's on the Republican line in Lakeland, Florida.
And it's still part of fucking the Crown, motherfucker, talking to me about democracy.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the call. I'd like to do something a little bit.
Fuck anyone that worships the king.
And I'd like to ask you a question. And my first question is, what do you think about chip manufacturing in the United States?
You're asking me?
Yes.
Well, Davis, the nature of this show is that it's a conversation.
I know, I understand that, but people don't understand. So I'm hoping you, as the editor and all of that, would understand
He's
about
not the editor.
Manufacturing. And apparently, people don't understand. And
Buddy, I don't know that you could open your web browser on your computer, let alone understand about chip manufacturing.
In other words, just to simply take a note.
I do know that part of the recent legislation that passed, the infrastructure legislation, calls for some of that reshoring. I think is what it's called, of the mining of that rare earth metals for those chips for the rare earth materials that go into those chips, as you mentioned, also go into the high-tech batteries that are used in cars and other cases as well.
However, what's the source of those the rare earth metals that go into the manufacturing?
Right, and I'm saying that some of the legislation that's recently passed has called for it to be reshored, to be brought back to the United States, as opposed to being gotten from other countries, including China.
Yeah, the
Taiwan is our issue.
Our rare earth metals are imported from China. Okay, and I don't wonder why people understand the big lie about green energy. See, the rare earth metals, Taiwan doesn't have the raw materials. The U.S. has some, but it's a big attack on energy. It's a lie. They won't allow us to mine here in the United States. They say they will, but it's a big lie. They're going to mine
Jesse?
Cambodia, Australia.
Thank you for being a freaking follower. Or is it Gessie?
Well,
So glad to have you here. Good morning.
Big legislation. In any case, Australia owns 51, or China owns 51% of the rare earth metals in Australia.
All right, well, appreciate you bringing up the topic. We'll go on to
I don't think that's true, but like China is very much sticking its nose in Australia.
You're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the border. I see McCartney and his.
Man, I just find it wild that you come in here and start bitching about CNN and stuff. We're watching C-SPAN.
Across, and I'd like to know what his plan would be to do this. I don't see any end in sight, and I'd like to see him and all of his posse that was down at the border make a contract with the people of America that they would have this problem fixed in 3 years, because it seems like the Republicans are throwing this up as their main battle against the Democrats, and they don't have a solution.
What views do they ban on social media?
That was on earlier, the congressman, he said he's been down to the border several times. What good did that do? Yeah, I could walk down there and look at the border and say, yeah, there's a problem here. But it just seems like they're griping on it. So I'd really like to see McCartney and his posse get together and solve this problem for the people of the United States, which I think there isn't any end. I don't think there's a way that anybody can stop the flow of people across the border 100%, or the drugs. And that's my comment, and thank you for having me on.
Sure. Roseville.
Wasn't he sweet?
Next up, Ray on the independent line.
Yes. I can't believe that I'm agreeing with the Republican from Florida about term limits, but that should be taken any time.
Buddy, I can't believe that I've given Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, Marco Rubio props this week. I even retweeted Matt Walsh and said Matt Walsh was correct.
They need to have some. I believe the American people might.
This has been a wild timeline.
Vote independent in the White House. That's not concerned about these frivolous. Like I said, I can't believe I agree with a Republican from Florida where they had most of the.
Ben, do you think that I am like the view of the fake news? Do you think I'm like towing the mainstream media line?
Agreeing with one another, so we'll end it there. And thanks for your comment. Thanks for all your calls this morning here on Washington Journal. We're back tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock.
That does it for Washington Journal. They're going to head over to the Supreme Court oral arguments. Do you think I'm like the mainstream media and I'm towing some kind of some line? Because let me tell you, buddy, I'm one of the most censored people on fucking social media. Have you heard the freaking news? YouTube, Facebook, and all of big tech are trying to do a cancel culture on Justin Freakin. Explain that one, sir. You want to talk about censorship? Hassan was playing the Kevin McGinnis Kanye West interview yesterday. Mainstream media is the most powerful entity on earth. Just saying fact doesn't make it true. And I would 100% disagree with that. So I don't know what you're on about, Sven, but hey, we're happy to have you here. What you posted? Well, first of all, if you posted links, then I have not seen any of your links. It's weird to me that you came in here and we're watching C-SPAN. We're watching C-SPAN and we're watching them take calls from Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and it was a very diverse, very educational. We learned a lot tonight. I'm used to being on of an evening. We learned a lot this morning. No, you came in here and started talking about like fake news and shit. I don't know what you mean by real news. I'm no fan of CNN, but like we play clips from CNN on the show. We play clips from Fox News. Clips from all sorts of media outlets, and I always try to point out their bias. So, like, if you've got a problem with CNN, don't fucking watch it. I don't understand right-wingers who constantly feel victimized by shit. Like, you're talking about people being forced to watch shit because CNN is on in an airport. Do you hear yourself? Everything is bias. I've explained this so many times here on this show. Like so you can't say one single outlet is biased, right? So like I've done news for over 20 years. At the station I worked for, like there were a bunch of different views. I worked with a lot of people that were right-wingers, and their bias came out in their reporting. But also my bias came out, like if I'm doing the graphics, I might select a picture of a Republican that doesn't look as flattering as one of the other pictures I could have picked. And that's my bias shining through. But when you're talking about a large outlet like that, the idea that there is some overwhelming bias towards one position is kind of hard when there's a bunch of divergent views within the newsroom. Buddy, you're not making any sense. So often with right-wingers, your idea of fake news just seems to be something you don't agree with. And you're like, oh, that's fake news. You just don't like the fact that was reported, so you're doing what's called an ad hominem. You are attacking the messenger. You are saying, oh, well, CNN is fake news, so I don't have to listen to anything they report. And right-wingers are very fond of doing this, and amazingly enough, the free speech people tell me, marketplace of ideas and everything, but they don't actually want that. So often the right-wing position is to try to silence divergent views, and they use this idea of bias in order to give themselves preferential treatment. Nick, my friend, good morning. Yeah, this was something that came up. We were watching a Christian the other day they were upset about the Yule festival, and he was like, there's thousands of gods, but there's only one true God, and that's Jesus Christ. And I'm like, well, how ironic that the one true God is the one you happen to believe in. How ironic that the news that you think is true is the one that aligns with your personal views. Don't you think that's odd? So guys, normally I'm not on at this time. I do a nightly news show. We're on Sunday through Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. And I love that now Sven is evaluating claims and shit and wanting a source. I don't know what you mean by mainstream media. When you say mainstream media, I tend to believe you mean corporate commercial media. And yeah, I've got a lot of problems with corporate commercial media, and that's why me, who has been in the media for over 20 years, is sitting here doing my own thing on Twitch and YouTube, as opposed to working for some conglomerate. you're talking about us watching and believing mainstream media, we're watching C-SPAN. We were watching C-SPAN. Do you think C-SPAN is mainstream media? Like, we're listening to the Supreme Court oral arguments over here.
Limitation, even if not a procedural limitation. We can see this in James Madison's remarks. I would refer the court to.
So does it look like we're watching and believing mainstream media? We're
laments partisan gerrymandering.
Watching fucking C-SPAN.
Out one state, South Carolina.
Do you know what C-SPAN is? This is not CNN.
Side are advocating for. They're saying you can have a partisan gerrymander, but you have to put it in the state constitution.
So that's not so much your argument then, this procedural substantive distinction is not so much a matter of the text, but it's...
Are you asking if I am left? Or are you asking if C-SPAN...
And text and structure and history.
C-SPAN is our government channel. Like you're not from the U.S. I don't believe, so I don't think you know that. Like C-SPAN is our government channel. Like they've got C-SPAN 1 shows the House of Representatives, C-SPAN 2 shows the Senate, and C-SPAN 3 shows judicial shit. Yes, I am left. That I think it's in the description. I say it quite often. I am a leftist. What do people with different opinions offend you? You can't possibly come in here and listen to somebody? Yes, I am a leftist. Not liberal, leftist. Do I have the commercial break here? Hold on. I think it's the last one on this one. Nope. Maybe it's the last one on the Seth Rollins one here. Yeah, here we go. Oh no, it's this one. Following. I don't even know where the fucking thing is. Buddy, do you realize how stupid you sound? You can't possibly come in here and listen to somebody who has a divergent opinion from you. I'm attacking you. Ben, my friend. Quite often you could accuse me of attacking people, that I'm quick to call people dumb fucks or morons or yada yada yada. That is usually a critique. You can level at me. I own up to it. But like this time, I've been pretty nice to you. And I've been trying to get where you're coming from. So I don't know how it was an attack on you. Aw, he left us. Where's Vin? It's shit like that makes me just have to go, right-wingers are morons. Jenny Burns, good morning. So glad to see you. Did I miss anybody else sneaking in here? I was gentle but persistent. Thank you, Scubaduck. It's because it's the morning. This is like my nighttime. I'm winding down, so I'm probably not as hot-headed as I would be. Tune in at the 8 p.m. Eastern show. RB in here getting creepy with the Nightbot. Oh shit!
You live in sexual anarchy.
I always got to keep RB in check. He gets a little horny sometimes. What were we watching the other night when Porg was in here? And Porg was so fucking horny for every. It was the Navy thing. I played this story. Well, it was the Rambo Dog story. Whatever the news organization was, it auto played Christmas in the Navy from 1986. And the entire time, Porg was talking about how hot every single person that popped up in the video. What, Mr. Willie, one of the seamen. One of the seamen had this character that they called Mr. Willie. Yeah, Nick, indeed. Way more tolerant and understanding than usual. I'm pretty quick to call people dumb fucks and morons. The Navy thing had a lot of porn stashes. That was fun. It's something that auto played, and I was like, all right, I'll go with it. So yeah, I do believe that apparently this is a very popular segment for us to do because there's way more people in here that watch the nightly news. However, of an evening, I'm up against a lot of big-ass streamers. And I do notice that a lot of people watch the replay of the show. They watch my VODs get a lot of replays, amazingly enough to me. People listen to the podcast. Also, if you're a podcast listener, I'll repeat this tonight on the real show. I had been doing video, uploading video to Spotify and all the podcast apps. And the reason I was doing that because it was seeming like Spotify was pushing video. So I was trying to do that in order to get more exposure. But what was ending up happening was that the podcast was getting uploaded at like 5 or 6 in the morning because it took so long to process the video. So I think I was knocking people that like to listen to the show overnight out of being able to hear it in a timely fashion. So from now on, I'm going to put the audio only up like right after we get off the air so you guys have it at like midnight. So if you're listening to it overnight at work and shit. What, they killed Stitcher? I didn't know that. I definitely have my qualms with Spotify, but I use Spotify. You definitely have to weigh the pros and cons with an app like that. For the longest time, I thought it had the best interface, but it started getting wonky. It seemed like they threw what $200 million at Joe Rogan, and then all of a sudden their app didn't work as well as it used to. So maybe you guys want to work on your app. But yeah, I was sad that I was because I was looking at the numbers. I'm like, there's people that aren't listening anymore, and I was like, I bet they're working overnight, and I'm not getting it up in a timely fashion. And sure enough, I put up the audio last night, and people would listen to it like right after I put it up. Also, I do news content, so you know it's timely shit. The longer you go away from the broadcast, the less pertinent the information is. But anyway, this has been fun. We're going to do this more often. I don't know that it's going to be every week that we'll do Prime Minister's questions and then the C-SPAN call-in. Sometimes I'm going to be asleep. Sometimes I'm working on shit for my clients. I've got videos I got to do for my clients just as soon as I get off here before I can even go to sleep right now. But I have a lot of fun doing Prime Minister's questions. I definitely have a lot of fun doing the call in. Help me get bigger as a channel, and we'll start doing we'll listen in on oral arguments. We'll
to implement that,
watch sessions of Congress
and regulate their elections laws. For the state ones, they pass.
Damn, Nick, I do believe you work in the medical field, though, so you're out there doing God's work for us, and we salute you. You are one of the heroes. Thank you for all that you do, Nick. I would like to be able to cover, just be able to throw on Congress, and we'll sit here and we'll just watch Congress all day. But as of right now, I still have a day job. I got to make videos and edit podcasts, and I've got to do a Christmas greeting. I got to do a Christmas greeting for one of my clients. It's like a, thank you. I work for a lot of marketing firms, right? So, they'll have a bunch of, I work for one that's a law marketing firm. So they handle the marketing for 20 law firms. And then I do their video content for them. So I'm like doing a thank you message to their clients. Damn, Nick, thank you so much. And you have been one of the earliest and biggest supporters. Thank you. Thank you. I try to have informative content, but we're doing it in a fun way, and I want to cover stories that other people aren't covering. And I want to bring you information that's pertinent. Like the whole thing about the only Supreme Court justice to be impeached was Samuel Clemens. No, that's Samuel Clemens. Samuel Chase, not fucking Mark Twain. Samuel Chase, the only Supreme Court justice to be impeached. He was acquitted in the Senate trial by 1 vote, and his nickname was Old Bacon Face. And this is the only kind of show on Twitch that's going to give you that kind of information. Oh shit, I've got to get out of here. I'm getting really slap happy. Let me find us someone to raid on the Twitch. I've tried to work on the YouTube. Supposedly I'm supposed to be able to raid people on YouTube too and set up events and shit, and I have not been able to do that. See, I don't know anybody that's on during the day, so it's hard for me to raid people because I don't know who's based and who's not. I do know that IDAN is based. Fucking Chapo Trap House is on. IDAN is fucking based, and we're going to go say hey to IDAN. Usually I would tell you to go ahead, light one up, and tip one back. It's all right to have a little fun before you hit the sack, but that kind of doesn't work on a daytime stream. So I'll end with what I end my stand-up comedy bits with. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. However, that doesn't couldn't raid IDAN for some reason. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Oh, I don't know. It won't let me raid IDAN. Maybe IDAN had because I raided IDAN not that long ago. We're gonna raid Plain Talk John. Okay, Mock's giving me a suggestion here. I've never checked out Lucid Fox, so we will go check out Lucid Fox. Thank you for the suggestion. Watching on Twitch, we're going to head over to Lucid Fox. Tom Zullery. Good morning, my friend. I don't think I got to say hey to you earlier. I'm so glad to see you. So, we'll see you tonight on the Troll Patrol. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. However, that doesn't limit your options very much at all.